Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Benno Numer. In today's story, we focus on the Numer family, who live in Balna, a city in northern Italy. The family consists of parents Peter Numer and Laura Perselli. Their son Benno is 30 years old, and their daughter Maid is 27 years old. Benno is a doctor who has completed his university education and is dedicated to fitness. His father, Peter, is 63 years old, and his mother, Laura, is 68 years old. Both retired from teaching at school. Despite their age, they are still active in social and cultural activities. The family is respected in the community. On January 4, 2021, Laura and Peter suddenly disappeared. They were last seen that morning when they went to the supermarket. Laura was planning to visit her mother, who had just returned home from the hospital. Laura rode her bike to her mother's house. A few hours later, Laura's sister sent her a short video of their sick mother, but Laura never opened the message. At the same time, Laura's daughter Maid was on vacation with a friend outside the city and sent her mother a photo but received no response. Benno called his mother at 8:30 that evening, but she did not answer. 3 minutes later, he sent a voice message to his girlfriend, Martina, expressing his concern that he had not been able to reach his parents. He told her that he would be at her house in about an hour or two for dinner as planned, and that he would be late. Benno asked her to call him back later on a regular phone line instead of WhatsApp because he did not have an internet connection. Martina called him back shortly afterwards, and they arranged to meet at 10:12 p.m. When Benno arrived at her house in his father's car, he said he had forgotten to shower. He went to wash his face and asked Martina if she could do his laundry. She didn't ask any questions and agreed to help. Benno gave Martina a bag full of dirty clothes. She didn't check the contents and threw them in the washing machine. The couple then had a great evening at the bar and a passionate night at her house. Benno didn't leave his girlfriend's house until 5:30 a.m. When he was with her at around 11 p.m., he sent his mother a short text message wishing her a good night. He noticed that she hadn't read it, but he was too busy that evening to think about it. Early in the morning of January 5, Laura's sister came to her house. She knocked on the door and rang the bell, but there was no response. It was clear that no one was home. Laura's sister was worried and called Benno to ask about Laura and Peter. However, Benno said he was not home and did not know where they were. Laura's sister was busy taking care of her sick mother and could not leave her alone, so she asked Benno to try to find them. Benno promised to help and suggested that their parents might have gone to the mountains, as they often did. He advised them to wait a few days. Meanwhile, Laura's daughter, Maid, was at the resort with her friend and boyfriend. She noticed that her messages had been ignored, which made her suspicious. She called her dad and was surprised when he didn't answer. His social media pages also showed unread messages, and she couldn't reach her parents, which made her even more worried. So Maid called her brother Benno, who said he was walking his dog in the mountains a few kilometers away from their parents' house, and he couldn't check on them. He seemed worried throughout the call, and his story sounded strange. The dog was very old and sick, barely moving even in their yard, so it was hard to believe he could hike several kilometers into the mountains with the dog. Unable to get more information from Benno, Maid decided to ask a neighbor who lived next door to her parents for help around 1:30 p.m. The neighbor was home, so she agreed to check on her parents. The neighbor knocked on the door, and Benno opened it. At that time, the neighbor was still on the phone with Maid. She immediately recognized her brother's voice and was surprised that he had just refused her request to check on her parents. Benno explained that he had rushed back to his parents' house after walking the dog and was now home. Benno said that their parents were not home and insisted that he did not know where they had gone. Maid called all the hospitals in the city because she had a strong feeling that something was wrong with her parents. Eventually, Maid stopped her outing and returned home. She asked Benno if he knew what had happened to their parents, but he said he did not know. He explained that he had spent the previous day with his girlfriend and had only returned home in the morning when their parents were no longer there. Feeling desperate, Maid decided to contact the police to report her parents missing. At this point, Benno began to discourage her from calling the police. He seemed to be stalling for time, but he suggested another approach that he thought would be more effective. So he contacted a friend who was a police officer for advice on how to handle the situation. Benno's friend suggested contacting a search and rescue service that specialized in mountain rescue, but that didn't help either. In the end, May decided to go to the police himself, regardless of whether Benno supported her decision or not. He eventually agreed, and they went to the police station together. The young man told them about his parents' disappearance and suggested that they might have gone into the mountains. He mentioned that an avalanche had occurred in the area they frequented about a day after they left. He believed that his mother and father might have been buried under the snow. This explanation seemed plausible to the police and became the main focus of the investigation. Laura and Peter were declared missing, and search teams were deployed to the site of the avalanche. Trained dogs were used to search. Despite a thorough search, it took a long time to cover the entire area. The police decided to interview Benno to gather more information. They noticed that he was evasive and increasingly uncomfortable when asked difficult questions, making his behavior seem suspicious. After leaving the office, Benno suddenly displayed a sudden and inexplicable aggression. He attributed this outburst to hunger, fatigue, and stress. The next day, there was still no news from the police about Peter and Laura, prompting Maid to return to the station. Benno tried to stop her again, insisting that the police needed more time to conduct the search. During this time, another girl named Jasmine contacted Benno. It turned out he was chatting with 3 other people on Tinder, and he was particularly interested in Jasmine, and he showed little interest in the ongoing investigation. On January 6, Maid returned to the police station. It had been 2 days since her parents had gone missing. Laura and Peter had not contacted her, which made her believe that something had happened to her parents. They usually informed her before they went into the mountains and would prepare carefully for such trips. She felt the need to conduct a more thorough search of the area near their home. The police were actively involved from the beginning. Initially, they focused on the possibility that the couple had gone missing in the mountains. During this time, Benno went to the supermarket with his new girlfriend, Jasmine, where he bought a large amount of hydrogen peroxide, explaining that he needed it to prepare to sell his father's car. Search teams along with volunteers were organized to search the areas outside the mountains and around Laura. Despite the large resources and the participation of about 600 people in the search effort, Peter and Laura were still missing. Everyone worked together in the hope of finding them quickly. Finally, Maid expressed her concerns. She thought about Benno's strange behavior and the fact that their parents had disappeared shortly after she left the city for a short time. During that time, Benno was supposed to be with them, and their relationship was complicated. She suspected that he might know more than he was letting on. The police decided to question Benno again. This time, during questioning, he was overly friendly, which was surprising given his violent reaction after his previous encounter with the police. The officers suspected that he was deliberately controlling his demeanor to avoid revealing any important information. During this time, suspicions grew that Peter and Laura were likely dead, and it was believed that the couple's son, Benno, might be involved. Benno became the prime suspect. Maid regularly contacted the police, sharing information about Benno and their parents. Benno's behavior was often so rude and aggressive that Laura was afraid to be home alone with him. On January 7, the police tracked Benno down. That day, Jasmine and Benno got into the family car and went to a hardware store where they bought rags, cleaning supplies, a bucket, and hydrogen peroxide. While Benno asked Jasmine to pay for the items, they stopped at a car wash before heading home. The police arrested them there and found all the items they had purchased in the trunk of the car. The car was impounded for further investigation. The police also attempted to confiscate Benno's jacket, but he refused to hand it over. Benno was questioned again that day. Ultimately, he did not provide any useful information, and since there was no evidence against him, he was released. Although the police confiscated the cleaning kit, Benno and Jasmine decided to clean the house. Benno asked her to wear the jacket the police had asked to confiscate. She did not suspect anything and agreed. After a short while, he took the jacket off Jasmine and put it away. Later that day, the police arrested Jasmine, thinking she might be involved in the case. They questioned her for hours about Peter and Laura's disappearance, but could not find any evidence to link her to the crime. Jasmine is later confronted by the Carabinieri police several times during interrogation, including when Benno's jacket is confiscated. Her hair and skin particles are found on the jacket, forcing her to prove her innocence. She explains that she helped Benno clean the house and wore the jacket, but she was unaware of the implications and risk of harm to herself. On January 17, Maid returns to her parents' house and finds Benno there. She decides to voice her suspicions, which leads to an altercation between them. Maid suggests that Benno may be involved in Peter and Laura's disappearance. He becomes hysterical, shaking as he tries to convince her that she is mistaken. He eventually swears that he had nothing to do with it. Despite his assurances, she remains suspicious of Benno, knowing he is a good liar. Benno tries to justify his actions. However, Maid knew about his troubled relationship with their parents and his aggressive nature. He was the only one capable of causing harm to their loved ones. On January 18, Benno was the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that he had killed his parents and then hidden their bodies. But the police lacked solid evidence. They only found a small blood stain on the car, not enough to confirm the death of his parents. However, the investigation continued. Important information came to light when Benno's phone was confiscated and examined. Geolocation data from the phone was examined on the evening when Peter and Laura went missing. The data showed that Benno had left the city and stopped near the bridge on the Adige River, where he stayed for a considerable amount of time. The police believed that he may have dumped their bodies there. This location became the focus of the search for evidence. On February 6, 2021, a search operation was launched in the Adige River. Police quickly located Laura's body. However, her husband, Peter, had been missing for more than 3 months. He was finally found on April 27, after Laura's body was discovered on the riverbank. A brown stain that looked like blood was found on the bridge over the river. Forensic experts analyzed the sample and confirmed that it was Peter's blood. Surveillance camera footage captured Benno's car on the evening of the incident as he returned from the bridge to his ex-girlfriend Martina's house, confirming that he was at the scene where the bodies were found. Peter's body was found by forensic experts in relatively good condition. A layer of algae had formed on it, slowing down decomposition, and the cold temperature helped preserve the tissues. This made it easy to spot signs of strangulation on both Peter and his wife. Marks on their necks indicated that they had been attacked from behind. The cause of death was confirmed to be strangulation, and it was determined that they had been thrown into the river after they were dead, as there was no water in their lungs. Given Benno's strong and muscular physique, he was able to overpower his elderly parents without much difficulty. After his parents' bodies were found, Benno admitted that he was involved in their deaths. On the night of the incident, he had an argument with Peter. Benno tried to avoid the argument by locking himself in his room, but his father barged in and continued the argument. In a fit of rage, Benno attacked his father with a rope and strangled him. When Laura heard the noise and went upstairs, he feared that she would call the police, so he strangled her as well. Although his confession seemed credible, his motives seemed too weak to justify such a brutal act. Benno explained that his relationship with his parents had become increasingly strained in the months leading up to the incident, marked by frequent arguments after he moved back in with them. Benno had begun paying rent at his father's request. However, due to the constant arguments, his father decided that it would be best if Benno moved out. He began to encourage his son to rent his own apartment, but Benno refused. To pressure him to move, his father increased the rent to €700, which Benno considered excessive and unfair. That evening, Peter called him a loser for spending too much time on the computer and forced him to walk the dog. Another argument broke out. This conflict escalated into a tragic situation. Benno claims that his father was the first to confront him, trying to kick him out of the house. As a result, Benno felt he had no choice but to defend himself. The investigation revealed that immediately after the murder, Benno began to create an alibi. He called his mother's cell phone, pretending to go looking for her. After the murder, he asked Martina to wash his clothes to erase any evidence. Although she handed the washed clothes over to the police, no incriminating marks were found on them. Police believe that his efforts to conceal the evidence indicate a deliberate act. Not only did Benno understand what he was doing, but he also tried to avoid consequences for this brutal crime. Benno attempted to explain his actions by claiming that he was mentally disturbed and affected by the attack. However, his calm demeanor and careful efforts to conceal evidence of the crime showed that he was fully aware of his actions. After his arrest, psychiatrists evaluated him and determined that he had a personality disorder characterized by narcissism and social problems. He had recently had frequent sudden outbursts of anger, which doctors attributed to his steroid use. Benno began taking additional medication. This led to a significant deterioration in his mental state due to hormonal changes, leading to increased aggression and a complete loss of self-control. Maid said that he would often attack her when angry and was often violent with other family members. On one occasion, she suffered multiple bruises as a result of his aggression. Even as a child, Benno tried to strangle her, but their parents were present at the time. In 2020, Benno entered a relationship with a girl named Nadine, and they moved to Germany together. A friend noted that at first, Benno was very attentive and caring. However, over time, his behavior became controlling, showing signs of selfishness and abusive tendencies. He tried to create distance between Nadine and her family, isolating her from her parents and friends, leaving her to spend most of her time alone. Things got worse when in June 2020, Nadine discovered that Benno had used her credit card without permission and stolen money from her account. This betrayal prompted Nadine to end the relationship. She called Benno's parents and insisted that they pick up their son from her apartment. His parents had to drive to pick him up. Just a day after their return, Benno made amends with Nadine, promising to pay her back and asking her parents to let him go home to Nadine. While Nadine was at work, he sent her a selfie showing him covered in blood. Benno claimed he had gotten into a fight with a friend named Dean. However, Dean was in another part of town at the time and did not see Benno. Benno sent some of the photos to his mother, Laura, who was concerned. She contacted a friend for advice. The friend suggested that Benno could be dangerous and advised Laura not to go to his apartment alone. Laura suspected that Benno's mental health had deteriorated due to his use of anabolic steroids. Benno was eventually taken away, and it was discovered that he had been self-harming due to hallucinations. After this incident, Nadine decided not to see him again, but he was discharged after only 3 days. During his stay, doctors did not have enough time to carry out all the necessary tests to diagnose his condition. It was suspected that Benno was schizophrenic, and his family insisted on further testing, but he refused and began taking medication for schizophrenia. By the time Benno's trial began, he had been diagnosed with acute polymorphic psychotic disorder rather than schizophrenia. This misdiagnosis meant that he was taking the wrong medication, which likely worsened his mental condition. While on steroids, he was taking a dangerous cocktail of drugs that affected his behavior. Immediately before the murder, Benno was released from the psychiatric hospital and returned home. During this time, his mother became extremely concerned for his safety. She hid all the knives in the house and locked the doors at night. She believed that as long as she did not provoke him, everything would be fine, so she tried to avoid arguments and limit her interactions with him. Unfortunately, this did not protect her from a tragic end. On November 19, 2022, Benno Numair was sentenced to life in prison. However, his lawyer quickly appealed the decision, arguing that Benno was insane due to a combination of negative factors that worsened his mental condition. To support the defense's claims, several independent medical assessments were conducted, which found him mentally stable. The prosecution pointed out that Benno acted deliberately, as he tried to create an alibi and conceal his actions. Just minutes after the murder, he called his girlfriend, pretending to be worried about his parents' absence. He ruthlessly deceived those around him, sending messages to his deceased mother, deceiving his sister and neighbors, all to escape justice. After the retrial, Benno's life sentence was upheld and remains in effect. The murders of Peter and Laura received considerable media attention in Italy and caused widespread public fear. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Victoria Nasirova. On September 2, 2016, police received a call from Olga Zvik, 35, a Ukrainian immigrant who worked as a beautician, who reported that several valuables had gone missing from her bedroom. She explained to police that she had recently been to the hospital, where she experienced severe dizziness and nausea, with occasional loss of consciousness. Even after returning home, she continued to appear distracted. During the investigation, the police conducted a detailed interrogation of Olga. She recalled a recent troubling encounter with a client named Victoria Nasirova, who came to her home and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions. Victoria had been in contact with the salon before and often acted as if she and Olga were friends. However, on that day, Victoria asked to come to Olga's home to get eyelash extensions. Olga explained that she only worked at the salon and did not accept home customers, but Victoria deliberately ignored her explanation and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions, and Olga finally agreed. Olga later told the police that Victoria had tried to ask her out several times, but she had refused. Another notable detail was that Victoria looked very similar to Olga, which often made Olga feel uncomfortable. During the investigation, it was discovered that Victoria had shown up at Olga's apartment with 3 pieces of cheesecake from the best local bakery. Victoria ate 2 and insisted that Olga have a third, to which Olga eventually agreed. After a brief tea party with cheesecakes, Olga felt unwell. Once Victoria left, Olga became extremely nauseous and lost consciousness for about 30 minutes. When she woke up, she called 911 and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. However, the doctors found nothing wrong in her blood tests. Upon returning home, Olga discovered that some of her valuables were missing and reported the theft to the police. Police were initially skeptical of her story, suspecting that Olga may have been under the influence of drugs, which were causing her to hallucinate. Her unusual behavior and appearance contributed to their suspicions. Police concluded that her account of the incident, including her reference to a woman who resembled her, was likely fabricated. Olga firmly denied using drugs and presented her argument convincingly. She believed that her issues stemmed from a piece of cheesecake she had eaten, suggesting it might have been poisoned. The police quickly inspected the scene and discovered a box from a local bakery in the trash. Olga identified the box as the cheesecake Victoria had brought. The police collected it as evidence because it still had crumbs left inside. Analysis of the cheesecake could determine whether it was the cause of Olga's problems. The examination of the cheesecake revealed no abnormalities. Despite this, the Olga insisted that the dessert was the reason for her illness. She mentioned that she had visited the hospital, where doctors examined her but found nothing unusual. In response to inquiries about her condition and the tests conducted, police contacted the hospital. However, the doctors declined to share information due to privacy policies. The police interpreted this refusal as further evidence to doubt the Olga's claims. Additionally, they could not locate the client mentioned by Olga, leading to a postponement of the case until more information becomes available. A neighbor provided details after noticing a suspicious woman near Olga's apartment the following day. The woman appeared several times, lingering around Olga's apartment until she encountered the neighbor. The strange woman said that her friend Olga was sick and then left in a hurry. Concerned, the neighbor noticed that Olga's apartment door was open and decided to check on her. When she entered, the neighbor found the apartment uncomfortably hot, with the heating system on full blast despite the hot summer weather. Olga was alive but unconscious in bed, dressed strangely, in a revealing bra and sweatpants. The police felt that someone had deliberately changed her clothes. Scattered around her were powerful pills, suggesting that Olga may have taken them with the intention of ending her life. The neighbor quickly called 911, describing the strange woman as dark-haired, attractive, and very similar to Olga. After receiving new information, the police were convinced that the woman who resembled Olga was real and not a figment of Olga's imagination. Therefore, the police intensified their efforts to investigate the case. The police suspected that Victoria Nasirova, who was involved in a cheesecake in the previous case, was involved in this case. The police began searching for Victoria, but they had no clues or even any photos of her. However, a private investigator, who had been monitoring Victoria's activities for a long time, tracked Victoria down on the internet and contacted the police. He located Victoria, where she was advertising her escort services on a dating website and social media. The private investigator suspected that she used these platforms to find victims for her crimes. Her methods were effective. Victoria would meet her victims, drug them with psychotropic substances to render them unconscious, and then steal their valuables. Meanwhile, Olga eventually recovered from her traumatic experience. After leaving the hospital, she shared her story of poisoning on social media. Soon after, one of her clients mentioned a man named Ruben Barakov who had gone through a similar situation. Ruben owned a dry cleaning business and had met a woman named Victoria on a Russian dating site a few months before Olga suffered cheese poisoning. Victoria had invited Ruben to her home, bragging about her cooking skills. He accepted the invitation, but as soon as he tasted her food, he passed out. Victoria then rummaged through his pockets, taking an expensive watch, cash, and cards. Ruben was under the influence of a powerful psychoactive substance and truly believed that it had nearly killed him. Victoria then took him to a dry cleaner's. She explained to Ruben's colleagues that he was drunk and she left. When Ruben regained consciousness, he realized that he had been robbed. The private investigator suspected the situation was much more serious and that the two victims were lucky to be alive. In 2017, he worked with a client from Russia who asked him to help track down a dangerous criminal. Nadia Ford contacted the private investigator after her biological mother, Alla Alexienko, went missing. Nadia currently lives in New York, USA, but was born in Russia. Nadia, who is from Krasnodar, was raised by her mother, Alla, who worked hard to provide for her children. Nadia had dreamed of living in the United States since she was a child, and her dream came true when she came to study in America in 2007. While there, she met a man, married him, and took his last name, Ford. However, their marriage did not last, and they eventually divorced. Nadia chose to stay in the United States and successfully built her life there. She kept a close relationship with her mother, Alla, who was living alone at the time. Alla sold her house and then moved to a new apartment. In early 2013, After moving into a new apartment, Alla had a new neighbor named Victoria Nasirova. Despite the significant age difference, Victoria quickly became friends with Alla. Alla shared stories about her daughter's life in the United States, which sparked Victoria's interest in visiting America and meeting Nadia. Alla then arranged for them to meet. In September 2013, Victoria went to New York, where she met Nadia, and they became close friends. Nadia was a kind and pleasant woman. Victoria sought her advice on how to stay in the United States, and Nadia shared a few tips. However, Victoria's plans did not work out, and she eventually returned to Russia. Despite this, she maintained a close relationship with Alla. In the fall of 2014, Victoria planned another trip to the United States, and she told Alla that she could help send gifts to Nadia. Trusting Victoria, Alla happily agreed. Alla then brought $6,000 in cash and valuables, including 2 expensive mink coats, to send to Nadia. Victoria then repeatedly postponed her trip to the United States for various reasons, leaving Alla worried about whether she would actually go and what would happen to her gifts. Worried, Alla called her daughter Nadia to express her concerns. Nadia reassured her mother and suggested that she ask Victoria to return her belongings. On October 4, 2014, Alla called Nadia with the good news that she had finally spoken to Victoria, who agreed to return her valuables. However, this never happened, and Alla soon disappeared. Nadia kept calling her mother, but she didn't answer. This was unusual since they were in contact every day. Worried, Nadia contacted Victoria to ask about her mother. Victoria confirmed that she had seen Alla, and they had talked and had tea together. Victoria then left, never saw Alla again. Victoria mentioned that Alla was planning to go somewhere, but she didn't know where. Victoria also tried to contact Alla and even visited Alla's apartment to check on her, but there was no sign of her mother being home. Alla was still unreachable. After a few days, Nadia and her brother received a number of unusual text messages from an unknown number, supposedly from their mother Alla. The messages stated that there was no need to look for her because she was happy. However, the way the messages were written was inconsistent with Alla's style, which raised their concerns. Nadia realized that something was definitely wrong and decided to book the next flight to Russia to assist in the investigation into her mother's disappearance. Upon arriving in Krasnodar, Nadia went to her mother's apartment, but it was stripped of valuables that Victoria was supposed to return. There was no trace of her mother. Concerned, Nadia quickly contacted the police and reported her mother's disappearance. She informed the police about her suspicions regarding Victoria, a neighbor of her mother who had become suspiciously close to her and failed to return Alla belongings. It soon became clear that Victoria had a motive to harm Alla. The police were interested in the information and devised a plan. Nadia called Victoria and pressed Victoria for information about her mother's whereabouts. Victoria, angered by Nadia's questions, shouted that her mother was still alive, but Victoria did not know where she was. The police, who had been listening in on the call, decided to approach Victoria. At her home, she successfully convinced the police that she was not involved and claimed that Nadia's accusations were baseless, with no evidence against her. Meanwhile, Nadia returned to her mother's apartment to investigate. She noticed that the place was surprisingly clean, with no dust, as if it had just been thoroughly cleaned, despite her mother's absence for several days. This raised questions for Nadia. Who could have cleaned the apartment? Additionally, she discovered that several valuable items, including jewelry and $50,000 in cash, were missing. Concerned, Nadia decided to report this to the police. The police, after speaking with Victoria, tried to persuade her that her mother had taken the money and jewelry on a trip and would be back soon. However, Nadia did not buy this explanation. She sensed that her mother was in danger and that it had something to do with Victoria. Nadia reached out to all her mother's friends and relatives, but no one knew where her mother was. In her desperation, Nadia printed flyers with her mother's photo and posted them all over the neighborhood. She also drove around the city, visiting her mother's favorite places, but her efforts were unproductive. Nadia contacted Victoria, begging her to return her mother and expressing her willingness to do anything, even offer a reward. However, Victoria denied any involvement. Despite this, Nadia remained hopeful that her mother was still alive and continued to search. She regularly went to the police for updates, but there was no information about her mother. Determined to find answers, Nadia hired a private investigator. After investigating, the private investigator discovered that Victoria had rented a car from a service center on the day Alla went missing. He checked the car's information and reviewed surveillance camera footage from October 5, 2014. The videos show a car driving on a highway outside the city. There were two people inside, Victoria, who was driving, and Alla Alexinko, motionless in the front passenger seat. She shared this information with the police, who confirmed that Victoria had rented the car and brought her in for questioning. Victoria admitted that she had driven the rental car that morning, October 5, but she denied that there was anyone else in the car with her. Victoria agreed to take a lie detector test. After completing the test, she was released, but the results later showed that she had failed, leading the police to consider her a prime suspect in the case. Before the police could arrest her, Victoria fled the country without notifying the police. They began searching for Victoria. Nadia remained in Russia for another 6 months to assist in the investigation, holding out hope that her mother was still alive. She also contacted Interpol for help in finding Victoria. Police traced the rental car to a dense forest in Armavir, which turned out to be Victoria's hometown. This is where the search for Alla began. Nadia's hopes of her mother's safe return were dashed in April 2015, when police informed her of the tragic news. Her charred remains were found in the same forest, about a 3-hour drive from where Alla went missing. Nadia was able to identify her mother through her dental records, as the rest of her body was badly burned and unrecognizable. The cause of death could not be determined. Following the identification, an arrest warrant was issued for Victoria Nasirova, and her case was referred to Interpol. After her mother's funeral in Krasnodar, Nadia returned to the United States. She found it difficult to cope with her mother's death and was unable to work for a long period. Eventually, she gathered her strength and made a promise to her mother that she would seek justice and ensure that those responsible for Alla's death would be punished. One day, Nadia discovered a photo of Victoria on social media. The wanted woman was showing off her lavish lifestyle in Mexico. After discovering this, Nadia contacted the U.S. police to report Victoria's whereabouts, and they began an investigation. At this point, Nadia hired one of the top private detectives in the United States to speed up the investigation. A wealthy friend of Nadia covered the cost of the detective's services, which she could not afford since she had not been working for several months while searching for her mother. The private detective thoroughly examined Victoria's social media photos and was able to confirm that she was already in the U.S. One of the selfies, taken while wearing sunglasses, showed a reflection of a car's dashboard. After examining hundreds, even thousands of cars, the private investigator determined it was a Chrysler 300. The private investigator was able to determine that the last photos were taken in Sheepshead Bay, a neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. By checking a database of cars in that area, he was able to narrow down his search and identify a suspect. He discovered that Victoria was living with her boyfriend in an apartment complex just 5 blocks from Nadia, and that the Chrysler was registered to her new boyfriend. Victoria was probably unaware that the case had escalated to the point where Interpol had a global warrant for her arrest, which is why she felt safe posting her photos online. The private investigator located the boyfriend and contacted him. It was discovered that he had been poisoned by Victoria. She followed her usual methods of poisoning her boyfriend and even poisoned his beagle, which unfortunately died. Victoria's freedom poses a danger, as her potential victims could increase. The police searched Victoria's apartment and discovered Olga Zvik's identity card. This discovery sheds light on why Olga was targeted by Victoria. Victoria needed money and valuables, but she also needed an ID that. With her temporary visa about to expire, she was looking to use someone else's ID to avoid returning to Russia, where she would have to stand trial. Police believe she intended to kill Olga, the real owner of the passport, to steal their identity. Fortunately, Olga survived thanks to the quick action of a neighbor. Additionally, the box containing the remains of the cheesecake was sent for analysis, marking a significant breakthrough in the investigation. The investigation returned to the lab, where researchers analyzed the cheesecake. It was determined that Victoria had used a sedative, but she had used a higher dose, which rendered her victims unconscious. Olga was lucky to survive after eating the cheesecake. The high temperature in her apartment was no accident. Heat amplifies the effects of the drug and can even be fatal. Victoria apparently knew this, so she increased the temperature in the house and tried to dress Olga in warmer clothes. But luckily, Olga was discovered by neighbors in time. After her arrest, Victoria denied all allegations against her, including the murder of Alla, who was Nadia's mother. She also rejected claims that she attempted to murder Olga Zvik and other victims. Victoria had previously been a suspect in the theft of 2 fur items in May 2016, but that case did not progress. Additional incidents emerged involving her in thefts, where she would meet men online, visit their homes, drug them, and rob them. Most of the men chose not to report these crimes to the police due to concerns about publicity, allowing Victoria to evade consequences. The trial was delayed for a long time. The case finally went to court in January 2023, attracting considerable media and public attention. Victoria chose not to testify at the trial and remained silent. The court could not discuss the details of Alla's death because it happened in another country. Victoria's defense argued that there was no evidence that Victoria had poisoned the cheesecake and forced Olga to eat it. Victoria herself ate 2 pieces in front of Olga and had no problems. The prosecution then argued that Victoria had only added poison to 1 piece of cheesecake, specifically the 3rd piece she offered Olga. She ate the other 2 pieces without the poison. This misled Olga. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury found Victoria Nasirova guilty of 2nd-degree murder. Although the maximum sentence for the crime is 25 years, the judge shortened her sentence to 21 years. By law, she could apply for parole after serving 15 years. Victoria faced harsh prison life. She frequently complained about poor food and inadequate medical care. During her incarceration, she was attacked, leaving her scarred and nearly blind. After the attack, Victoria sued the prison, alleging that guards were negligent in failing to support her. The case ended in a $325,000 settlement. In a recent interview from prison, Victoria denied any wrongdoing, including Alla's murder. She claimed that she had nothing to do with poisoning beautician Olga with the cheesecake, explaining that she had eaten the cheesecake herself and had not become ill. Victoria said that she had only shared a piece of cheesecake with Olga and had not forced her to eat it. After completing her prison sentence in the United States, Victoria will be deported to Russia, where she will face trial for Alla's murder. Her daughter Nadia said she was relieved that Victoria was in prison and would not be able to escape justice. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nicole Pitts. Nicole Pitts was born in late February 1973 and grew up in King County. She attended Eastern Washington College. Every summer, her family traveled to Seattle and spent much of their time at Lake Samash. Nicole had a close relationship with her mother, Gail, and had a good relationship with her father, Rod. In the 1990s, while working at a fitness club, she met her future husband, David. Their relationship quickly developed into a romantic relationship. After spending some time together, they married in 2002 in Maui, Hawaii. In 2005, the couple bought a condominium in Linwood, Washington, a place where they could enjoy their time together. At that time, Linwood was a quiet town with a population of fewer than 40,000 people. It featured narrow streets and many bars and restaurants, similar to their previous home. The young family quickly fell in love with the area. Nicole was outgoing and made friends easily. Within days of moving in, she had made many new friends. She is an animal lover and often walks her dog around the neighborhood or relaxes at home with her 2 cats. She cares for them as if they were her own children. Nicole's career was going well. After finishing school, she worked at a fitness club for a while before becoming a corporate manager at a mobile phone company. She lived close to where she worked. Nicole was an important member of the team because she easily connected with her colleagues and helped them solve problems. However, she faced challenges from an early age. She was introduced to alcohol as a teenager and eventually became an alcoholic. This started when her parents divorced, which left her feeling lost. Her mother, a flight attendant, was often away on business trips, so Nicole was often left in the care of her elderly grandmother, which led to her hanging out with the wrong crowd. Fortunately, Nicole's parents noticed their daughter's issue early on, and with the support of her family, she was able to overcome her bad habit. They attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings together, where she received guidance, making her journey easier. However, her alcohol use had lasting effects, resulting in significant health problems. At age 21, Nicole was diagnosed with endometriosis and underwent 3 surgeries. Following these procedures, she was prescribed pain medication to control her chronic pain. By 2006, 32-year-old Nicole had been avoiding alcohol for 8 years. Despite this, she remained an active and valuable member of her Alcoholics Anonymous group. She attended every meeting, viewing them not just as a way to manage her own recovery, but also as an opportunity to support others in their struggles. Nicole understood the challenges of the fight against addiction. From a young age, she had a passion for cooking, which only grew stronger over time. She loved preparing a variety of dishes and often brought her homemade meals to work for her husband, David, who always appreciated her efforts. Nicole was very close to her mother and called her every day. In early 2006, she was excited about her upcoming 33rd birthday. However, just 2 days before her birthday, she unexpectedly missed an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in nearby Renton, surprising everyone. That night, David returned home late from work and went straight to bed, thinking Nicole would still be home. However, the next morning, he discovered that she had left, and he never saw her again. David tried calling Nicole to check on her, but she didn't answer his calls. He was worried that she might be upset because he hadn't spoken to her at dinner the night before and had gone to bed early from exhaustion. Despite his attempts to contact her, Nicole remained silent, which made him even more worried. He also contacted some of her friends and her mother, but no one had seen her. That evening, when David returned home and Nicole had not returned, he became alarmed. Worried, he decided to go to the sheriff's office, but was told that there was not enough time to classify her as missing. However, David convinced the police to investigate her whereabouts, as her behavior was very unusual, and he feared that something might have happened to her. Police arrived at David's home and discovered that, in addition to Nicole, her 2003 Volkswagen Jetta was also missing. Nicole had left for work that morning, but was gone. Her mother became concerned about Nicole's disappearance, especially since she had not received any calls from her daughter all day, which worried her. After police confirmed that no one had seen Nicole since she went missing, they began searching for her that same day. The family of the Nicole booked flights to Washington, hoping for the best and wanting to assist in finding their daughter as quickly as possible. Everyone was confused because Nicole was known to be reliable and responsible. She would never have vanished or ignored calls. Even if she couldn't answer right away, she would have called back soon. As her silence continued, her parents and husband grew increasingly worried. Those involved in the search for Nicole sprang into action immediately. Nicole's mother and stepfather went straight to the police upon arriving in the city. Members of the Alcoholics Anonymous Club, who cared deeply for Nicole and wanted to support her family, also joined the search efforts. The club was significant to Nicole, as she never missed a meeting and was set to receive an award for 8 years of sobriety, which she took great pride in. There was no reason for her to leave or abandon everything. Nicole's voicemail was filled with calls from friends and family, but none of them had been able to reach her. Some were concerned that Nicole might have relapsed, despite successfully battling her addiction for years. The police were actively searching for her, searching the surrounding areas of Linwood, but they found nothing. Meanwhile, Nicole's parents took action by creating a website to gather information about Nicole. Many people responded to the family's call for help, but most of the messages were just well wishes, and the little information they received turned out to be false. The search seemed to stall until a new event changed the course of the investigation. On February 7, a local resident was jogging near a wooded area of San Francisco Park, near a small lake. He accidentally discovered a strange object under a raspberry bush. Curious, he approached and was horrified to discover the body of a girl. A nearby witness quickly called the police. The police arrived in time, and acquaintances recognized the body as Nicole's. Forensic experts later confirmed that there was no evidence of rape. After the autopsy in the laboratory, it was proven that the Nicole had received multiple injuries during the beating, but the cause of death was asphyxia. The Nicole had multiple blunt force injuries on her legs, torso, and head, indicating a brutal murder driven by personal hatred. This raised the question, who could have done this? Nicole had no known enemies. The case was changed from a disappearance to a murder investigation. The news of her death was devastating for David and parents. News of her death devastated David and her parents. Police began investigating her bank card transactions to trace her final movements. They discovered that her card was last used on January 30 in a nearby town where she had paid for gas. Police requested video footage from the gas station, suspecting that the killer may have made the purchase instead of Nicole and hoping to identify him in the footage. While police wait for surveillance camera footage, they continue to search for Nicole's car, as it may contain important information for the case. Police reviewed Nicole's identity and social connections, but still found no clues. Nicole was known as one of the friendliest members of her work group and club. She had no enemies. Instead, she was a devoted friend, a loving wife, a caring daughter, and a skilled employee who loved her pets. Nicole even turned her own struggle with alcohol into a positive by supporting others who were trying to get sober, setting an example for them. While the police were searching for the car, her relatives and friends shared information about the missing car and Nicole's situation. They publicly appealed for help, urging people to be aware of the car and avoid touching it. Flyers were distributed that stressed the importance of calling the police immediately if the car was discovered, as the car was linked to Nicole's murder. This prompted local residents to pay attention to Nicole's car. On February 21, 2006, her car was discovered parked near the university. Police quickly seized the car for forensic analysis, hoping to gather evidence to arrest the perpetrator and piece together the events surrounding the tragedy. Inside the car, they discovered a large amount of trash and various items, including books and sports equipment. Police discovered that after Nicole went missing, someone had used her ID and credit cards. Police are investigating the possibility that Nicole's car may have broken down on the way, and she was picked up by a stranger and harmed, and the location of her car was unusual because Nicole was supposed to be traveling to another city. The position of the car seat suggested that it had been driven by someone much larger and taller than her. In the lab, experts meticulously measured the seat position to gather clues about a potential suspect. They found DNA evidence inside the car, including hair and a single fingerprint. Police collected DNA and checked. Several patrol officers searched the area where the car was found. They asked anyone nearby if they had seen Nicole's car or who had parked it, but this did not yield any useful information. The police discovered that the car had been parked in the lot since February 10, as an illegal parking ticket from that date was stuck to the windshield. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras available to assist in the investigation. Forensic tests showed that all traces of DNA in her car belonged to Nicole and David. The investigation yielded no new information to solve the case. By early April, there had been no progress. Nicole's parents had offered a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. During this time, Nicole's mother, Gail, made frequent appearances on various television channels to raise awareness of the case. After a while, Nicole's family had to return to Arizona to work, but they kept in touch with the police who were handling the investigation. Nicole's father, Rod, was heartbroken and frustrated that the investigation was taking so long. Despite their efforts, the investigation continued without any breakthroughs. In September, the case was handed over to an experienced police officer. The new police quickly requested a search warrant for the house of the Nicole, which had not been done before. He aimed to find clues among her belongings, particularly on Nicole's computer. Unfortunately, the house revealed no signs of a crime, no blood or other evidence. The computer also yielded no useful information. Police continued to interview witnesses and acquaintances of Nicole. One of them was Barbara, a friend who had met Nicole at an Alcoholics Anonymous club. They had planned to meet at a coffee shop the evening Nicole went missing, but she never showed up. At first, Barbara thought Nicole was just running late. Then Barbara tried calling Nicole several times that day, but Nicole did not answer any of her calls. During this time, the police still had no clues to the case. Meanwhile, Nicole's parents, Rob and Gail, were at their home in Arizona. Their grief did not subside for a year. Feeling desperate, they decided to hire a private investigator because they were puzzled by the inconsistencies in the case. Nicole had left the house without her wedding ring, which was very unusual for someone who was so proud of her marriage and who would never willingly remove such a meaningful symbol. A private investigator began his investigation, but no leads were found. Nicole's family then increased the reward for information about the criminal to $25,000. Organizations focused on fighting crime and finding missing persons contributed an additional $1,000. The community remained tense, knowing that a dangerous criminal was still at large, the perpetrator seemingly without a motive, suggesting that he could be a madman ready to strike at any time. The police then requested a search warrant for Nicole's computer, believing it might contain clues about the criminal. In October 2009, the private investigator hired by Nicole's parents was charged with fraud. He falsely claimed to have found evidence in the case, but said he needed money to handle it. Her parents gave him more money, but then the private investigator disappeared and took on another case. As a result, his license was revoked. Nicole's parents no longer have a private investigator and no leads on the identity of the killer. In 2011, 5 years after Nicole's death, the investigation was still ongoing, but no significant updates were made. On March 21, 2012, the final suspect was arrested and revealed to be Nicole's husband, David. By this time, police had enough evidence against him. He was held in custody with bail set at $1 million. The prosecutor noted that the case had progressed significantly due to new technologies that were previously unavailable, especially in the field of forensic science. Police found that David's account of the night before Nicole's disappearance did not seem convincing. Additionally, police noted that only David and Nicole's DNA and fingerprints were found in her car. If strangers had been in the car, their fingerprints would still be there because they had not been erased. If the criminal had tried to erase the fingerprints, there would have been no fingerprints left. The driver's seat was adjusted to fit David's size, and surveillance footage from a gas station captured a person resembling him. After Nicole went missing, He used her cell phone to make multiple calls from various locations around the city. Police believed he was trying to throw the investigation off track. However, modern tracking technology allowed them to pinpoint the exact location of the calls, proving that Nicole could not have been there at the time because she was dead. Notably, both Nicole's and her husband's phones worked in the same areas. Strangulation, the method of murder, usually indicates a personal connection between the killer and the victim. Evidence found at the crime scene indicated that the killer was someone close to Nicole. This is consistent with the fact that she was not sexually assaulted. The medical examiner determined Nicole's time of death. It was found that she was killed at night or early in the morning while still in bed. Her limbs were clean, with no signs of struggle. Forensic experts determined the time of death by examining Nicole's stomach contents. They found that the food Nicole had eaten the night before was still undigested, suggesting that she had been murdered before she got up to go to work the next morning. Although they appeared to be a loving couple, it was clear that this was just a cover, and there were multiple reasons behind the crime. At the time, the family was facing serious financial difficulties. David is quite the party animal. He enjoys drinking and smoking marijuana, which puts a dent in the family budget. Nicole spent a lot of time and effort dealing with her addiction and had been trying to stay sober for years. David was jealous of his wife's strength. He also had affairs, and during the investigation, it was discovered that he had had at least 4 affairs. His lifestyle meant that he often pressured his wife into having sex. He even tried to drug her at a club to convince her, but she refused. This made him angry. He often met women at clubs, which led to sexual encounters. Just days after Nicole went missing, he began seeking new relationships. By the time he was arrested, David had remarried and had a child. This was especially painful for Nicole's parents, as their daughter had always wanted children. But David had no interest in that. Furthermore, David quickly began collecting documents to claim Nicole's life insurance. After gathering all the information, David was called in for questioning. At the police station, he denied any involvement in the murder. When asked to take a lie detector test, he agreed, but the results showed that he had lied. He was eventually arrested and charged with murder, but David firmly denied any involvement in the crime. The trial started in September 2013, 7 years after Nicole passed away. Her family and friends gathered in the courthouse, hoping for justice. The defense lawyer for the David argued that Nicole's death was linked to her relapsed alcohol addiction and possibly a new addiction to prescription drugs. He pointed to an empty pill bottle found during a search of the bathroom as evidence of this. And the defense insisted that all the evidence against David was circumstantial and that the case was based on speculation. Nicole's parents testified in court that David did not participate in the search efforts, did not help distribute flyers, and only pretended to be upset. Nicole's mother explained that the medication in question was a prescription painkiller prescribed to her daughter to treat severe abdominal pain caused by her endometriosis, which had significantly improved her condition. Prosecutors were unable to prove intentional conduct, so David Pitts was charged with second-degree murder. David was sentenced to 18 years and 4 months in prison, the maximum sentence under state law. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Zara Alina. Zara was born in the UK in the winter of 1986. She was the first of 5 children born to a young single mother who lived with her own parents. The family had immigrated from Pakistan in 1968. Zara grew up in a close-knit, multi-generational household. Although they didn't have much money, her family placed a strong emphasis on education and was committed to ensuring Zara had everything she needed to lead a fulfilling life, including love, support, and a good education. During her childhood, Zara enjoyed dancing and swimming. She aspired to become a lawyer. She had a friendly nature and a cheerful spirit. As a teenager, she had the opportunity to travel around England and visit museums and galleries. These experiences expanded to trips throughout Europe. After graduating from high school, Zara enrolled in law school at the University of Westminster. She showed a passionate and determined spirit. Her commitment to justice was evident in the auditorium, where she actively supported refugees fleeing violence. She also volunteered at soup kitchens for the homeless. Those who knew Zara said she left a trail of joy wherever she went. She was also very hardworking and managed to cover all her own expenses. In fact, she worked as a salesperson at a local clothing store and was well acquainted with everyone in the area, from teenagers to seniors. She greeted everyone with kindness and was always willing to help. Sometimes, she uses her money to take stray cats to the vet, care for them at home, and encourage neighbors to adopt them. An important person in Zara's life is her friend Cassie Peters. They visit each other regularly or talk on the phone almost every day. By 2002, after passing her exams and completing her first year, Zara was offered a job at the Crown Prosecution Service. This was a crucial step towards becoming a fully fledged solicitor, a goal she was determined to achieve. On her first day, she took a cheerful selfie and sent it to friends and family. At 35, Zara got a new job, which further strengthened her confidence in her plans to start a family soon. Near her home lived a man named Jordan McSweeney. Jordan was several years younger than her. At the age of 13, he had already faced charges in a youth court in Kent for various offenses committed between 2006 and 2009. In August 2010, when he was 17, he was convicted of assaulting a girl, which resulted in her having a swollen eye. For this, he received a 4-month community service order. 11 years later, he assaulted another woman and was given a 3-year community service order. By the start of the 2020s, Jordan was 28 years old. Jordan has a troubling history, with convictions for 9 offenses, including theft, assaulting police and the public, vehicle theft, traffic violations, committing crimes while out on bail, and shoplifting. On his profile on a popular social media platform, he boasted about owning many knives and promoted his criminal lifestyle through photos and quotes. He even shared fake wanted posters claiming he was being sought by the FBI. After serving time for criminal damage, racially aggravated stalking, and illegal possession of a knife, he was released on June 17, 2022. After his release, Jordan violated all terms of his agreement and missed 2 consecutive appointments with his probation officer. As a result, police revoked his benefits and began the process of revoking his parole, with the intention of sending him back to prison on June 22, 2022. 2 days later, on June 25, police went to Jordan's mother's house to arrest him but found he was not there. That night, Zara had planned to meet a friend, after speaking to her aunt on the phone and mentioning her plans to go out. Her aunt advised her to stay safe, but Zara reassured herself that she would not be going far from home and felt confident in the safety of the route she was taking, as she was very familiar with the area. Zara then met her friend at a local bar called the Big Spoon in Ilford, a vibrant and diverse area in London's West End, ideal for dinner and conversation. The girls went to the bar before going to another nearby venue. In the bar, Zara only drinks water, not alcohol. By this time, Jordan had had several drinks at other nightclubs. He had a disturbing idea in mind and was determined to carry it out. He planned to find a woman to attack that night. Surveillance footage captured him at the bar entrance, where he was seen hugging women without their consent and trying to kiss them. He was particularly aggressive towards one of the staff, despite her clearly feeling uncomfortable, and he was eventually kicked out of the bar after 11 p.m. His inappropriate behavior was recorded by security cameras as he left. While walking along Fort Street towards the park, he noticed a woman hurrying by and began to follow her closely. Despite her attempts to evade him, he was outside waiting when she entered a store. After she carefully exited, Jordan trailed her again. However, when the woman finally entered her home, Jordan had to move on. At around 2 a.m., when the streets were fairly deserted, Jordan saw another woman walking. Surveillance footage shows him quickly approaching her, but two passers-by noticed something was wrong and helped the woman get home safely. Meanwhile, Zara and her friend decided to leave the bar at 2 a.m. The friend took a taxi, but Zara, thinking the distance was short and the weather was nice, opted to walk. She headed to Cranbrook Street, which was well lit and about a 10-minute walk from her home. It was then that Jordan spotted her. Jordan followed Zara for approximately 800 meters before seizing her. He approached her from behind, covered her mouth with one hand, and started to strangle her with the other before dragging her into a wooded path. There, he sexually assaulted and violently beat her. Jordan then returned home at around 2:30 a.m. On June 26, 2022, Zara was found on the pavement in Ilford, with her belongings scattered along the pavement. She was brutally beaten, partially stripped of her clothes and lying on the side of the road. A passerby performed CPR until an ambulance arrived, but sadly, Zara died in hospital at 9:58 a.m. on Sunday. During this time, Jordan was captured on the park's security camera. Police visited Zara's grandmother to ask her to identify her granddaughter in the bar's security camera footage. After she confirmed it was Zara, police explained to her what had happened. Later, the police conducted a thorough investigation in the area where Zara was found, collecting surveillance camera footage to track the movements of her attacker. This investigation, along with bloody fingerprints found near the scene, led them to identify Jordan as the suspect. They tracked his location using surveillance cameras and obtained images of the prime suspect. Police then arrested Jordan as he slept in his trailer. He did not resist arrest. Inside his trailer, police found blood-stained clothing and shoes. Despite hours of questioning, he remained silent. The crime prompted probation officer Justin Russell to point out several mistakes the probation department made in handling Jordan's case. He noted that Jordan had been a felon for 16 years, both in prison and after his release, which classified him as a dangerous offender. However, he did not receive the appropriate level of supervision. Had more drastic measures been taken, he could have been sent back to prison after missing scheduled meetings with his probation officer. September 30th was set for the trial, but it was postponed. Zara's family then held a vigil in her memory, along the route she was supposed to take home, symbolizing her unfinished journey. Many people dressed in white to attend the vigil. The event was attended by more than 120 organizations dedicated to women's rights and the fight against violence. During a preliminary hearing at East London Crown Court, forensic scientist Nadia Perso said that local police could have done more to locate Jordan before he attacked Zara. Nadia believed that the case deserved more media attention and suggested that the inquest should also consider the actions of prison staff and probation officers. Nadia estimated that the inquest would take about a month. On November 16, 2022, Jordan did not attend the hearing, despite being told he needed to attend via video link. However, he later pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow described him as unfit for bail, a view supported by Judge Chima Grove. Sentencing was adjourned until December 14, 2022. Jordan McSweeney was sentenced to 33 years in prison for the murder of Zara Alina. Jordan and his representatives appealed the verdict, but the sentence was upheld at 33 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Susan Wright. Susan met Jeffrey Wright while working as a waiter at a restaurant in Galveston, Texas. They quickly fell in love and were married a year later. They soon had 2 children, and Susan's family seemed to be the ideal one. Jeffrey was a successful carpet salesman, while Susan managed the house and raised the children. They lived in a large house in Harris County, Texas. However, Despite their outward success, things were not going well. Susan often had bruises on her body, indicating trouble behind closed doors. On a cold January evening, January 13, 2003, 26-year-old Susan stabbed her husband, Jeffrey, 93 times and buried his body in their backyard. The following day, Susan sought a restraining order against Jeffrey, claiming he had assaulted her the night before. 5 days later, she called her lawyer and confessed to killing her husband. The lawyer then contacted the police and informed them of the location of Jeffrey's body. When the police arrived, they discovered Jeffrey's body, which had been partially unearthed by a dog. He was found with his wrists bound and his robe tied around his ankles. Susan was later arrested. Susan pleaded not guilty, stating she acted in self-defense. She tearfully shared stories of the abuse she endured during her marriage, describing her husband as a sadistic substance abuser who seemed charming on the outside but controlled and belittled her. She lived in fear of his temper and was afraid to speak up when he was angry. He threatened to kill her and their children if she ever tried to leave. Susan recounted a specific incident when Jeffrey came home high from boxing classes and wanted to continue the training with their 4-year-old son, Bradley. He struck Bradley in the face, which made the child cry, and then he insulted him. Later, he turned violent towards Susan, forcing her to lie down in bed and then raped her. Afterward, he returned with a knife, and at that moment, Susan realized he was truly dangerous. Fearing for her life, she fought back by grabbing the knife and kicking him in the groin with her knee. Susan recounted that during the struggle, she managed to wrest the knife from her husband. She first stabbed him in the neck and then continued to stab him several times in the torso. At that time, her son, Bradley, knocked on the bedroom door and entered. Susan realized that she needed to get the child out of the bedroom. But she was afraid that Jeffrey would wake up and endanger her and her child. To prevent this, she tied her husband's right hand with a tie on the bed and hid the knife. She then brought Bradley back into the room. She expressed that she knew he was going to kill her and that she was very scared. Despite her fear, she stabbed him several times. After cutting the tie that bound him, she pulled her husband out of bed. His shoulder hit the nightstand, spilling wax from the candles he had lit earlier. She then brought a cart into the bedroom, placed him on it, tied his left hand to the cart, and tied his legs with a belt from his robe. She pushed the cart outside to the hole he had dug a few days ago and buried him. However, she insisted that she believed he was still alive. She spent the entire night on the couch, holding a knife, convinced that he would get up and pursue her. Susan was terrified to fall asleep, fearing she would be killed, but he never returned. She later shared that on the night of the murder, she suffered a mental breakdown that lasted several days. When asked why she didn't report it to the police right away, she said her mind was still struggling to comprehend the situation. It wasn't until Saturday morning, 5 days later, that she began to grasp the gravity of what had happened. The defense attorney highlighted multiple defensive wounds on Jeffrey's body, indicating that he was not initially restrained and had tried to fight back. Prosecutor Kelly Sigler alleged that Susan deceived her husband into getting into bed and tied him to the headboard, leading him to believe they were about to play a game. At that moment, she revealed a knife and turned the bedroom into a scene of torture. The prosecution stated that Susan's motive was to claim a $200,000 life insurance payout. They also pointed out that Susan had previously been a topless dancer at age 17, characterizing her as a promiscuous woman. During the trial, a bloody bed was brought into the courtroom. One prosecutor secured the bedposts while Kelly removed her high heels, sat on her colleague, and reenacted the knife stabs using the actual knife that Susan had used. This dramatic demonstration shocked everyone present. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury rejected Susan's self-defense claim and convicted her of first-degree murder. As a result, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In November 2004, Susan filed an appeal. Her new attorney argued that she had not received a fair trial, claiming that the prosecutor's staging of the trial had influenced the jury's decision. The case was complicated by the fact that Susan's previous lawyers lacked experience and did not provide adequate representation. They failed to call witnesses who could support Jeffrey's claims of abuse and did not consult domestic violence experts. Crucially, they did not bring in the psychologist who had assessed Susan after the incident and determined that she was in a psychotic state, genuinely believing that Jeffrey was still alive. These points were compelling, leading to a new sentencing hearing in early 2009. A new trial began, and during the trial, the psychologist finally revealed what Susan had shared with him. She told him that she had woken up in a cold sweat, afraid that Jeffrey would try to come back. She had been convinced that he was right behind the fence. It took her a long time to realize that he would not come back. The psychologist noticed Susan's shy and submissive demeanor. She apologized for everything. This behavior is very common among women in abusive relationships. After the police investigated the case further, it was discovered that after turning 18, she had worked as a semi-nude dancer in a bar. However, after 2 months, she quit her job. After graduating from college, at the age of 20, she met Jeffrey, 29. He treated her well, gave her flowers and took her to fancy restaurants and clubs. Jeffrey expressed his love for her, and Susan found him sweet and handsome, with beautiful brown eyes. They married in October 1998, and a month later, their son Bradley was born. Since the birth of their son, he has changed a lot. He began to humiliate her for gaining weight during pregnancy and reacted angrily when she confided in him about her postpartum depression. Jeffrey even forbade her from taking the antidepressants prescribed by her doctor. He wanted her to become a housewife, staying at home all day. He only allowed her to go to the grocery store or visit her mother, limited to an hour and a half. One day, when she asked if she could attend some classes, he refused. When he found out she had gone to those classes, he became angry, verbally abused her, and physically assaulted her. Susan initially did not know that Jeffrey was using illegal drugs or that he had been convicted of possession in 1996 and was on probation. However, she began to suspect that he was using drugs, and her concerns were confirmed when she found drugs in their home. He then openly used drugs in front of her and became increasingly aggressive. Susan feared for the safety of her children and tried to protect them from his violent outbursts. She noted that the physical violence increased after they moved into their home in April 1999. His anger flared for a variety of reasons, such as financial problems, the electric bill, meals he did not like, or noise from the children. Susan described how he would often kick her in the chest, stomach, back, and legs. He also kicked their dog and sometimes threw it across the room. This may have caused the dog to harbor resentment toward Jeffrey, which may explain why it later dug up his body and bit off part of his hand in retaliation. Susan explained that at first she did not tell anyone about the abuse. She did not feel ashamed, but instead felt guilty, thinking, "It was my fault, and I was not good enough for him." To hide the signs of abuse, she rarely left the house. She never considered seeing a doctor to treat her injuries or reporting Jeffrey to the police, fearing that he would retaliate with more violence if she did. When a lawyer asked her why she did not leave him, she replied, "He threatened to kill her and her children if she tried to leave." However, she escaped in 1999 after another brutal beating. While Jeffrey was at work, she called her sister Cindy, who arrived with her husband and a trailer to help her move. They packed their belongings, along with Susan and her child, and went to her parents' house. The next morning, Jeffrey called Susan to her parents' house, threatening that a truck would be arriving soon and that she needed to load her belongings into the truck and return home, or he would kill her and her child. Fearing for their safety, she complied. Susan became pregnant again in December 2000, but unfortunately, she miscarried after Jeffrey kicked her in the stomach. She became pregnant a third time, and in December 2001, she gave birth to a daughter named Kaylee. Susan then suffered from postpartum depression, which made Jeffrey even angrier. He began dating other women through a website called Etna Omsk and eventually infected Susan with a sexually transmitted disease. In 2002, Jeffrey changed jobs and began to earn very little money. His behavior became increasingly erratic. He bought an air gun and told his wife that he needed it to maintain discipline in the family. On one occasion, he beat his wife with the gun and even hit her on the head with a brick. On New Year's Eve 2003, he ominously told Susan, "Happy New Year, this will be your last year." Susan's relatives, neighbors, and friends testified that Jeffrey physically abused her. They described him as violent and aggressive, often unable to control his anger. The defense highlighted that during the initial investigation, the police overlooked numerous holes in the walls of their home that Jeffrey caused by hitting Susan. There was also a broken bathroom door. Jeffrey had slammed it on her hand with such force that he broke her hand. It was established that Susan was unaware Jeffrey had taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy, which he kept secret from her. Additionally, Susan's mother reported seeing multiple bruises on her daughter and heard her scream in pain when she tried to hug her due to severe back pain. The prosecutor's witnesses included several friends and co-workers of Jeffrey, all of whom testified that he was a great person. One friend described Jeffrey's marriage to Susan as very happy and perfect. While the couple's friends acknowledged that Jeffrey had previously struggled with substance abuse, they insisted that those days were long behind him and that his marriage had positively changed his life. The prosecutor raised questions about how Susan managed to stop, tie him up, open the door, take Bradley, walk him down the hallway, return to the room, close the door, get another knife, and then go back to the bedroom to continue the attack. The prosecutor argued that Susan was aware of her actions and was attempting to conceal the crime. Kelly pointed out that the following day, Susan came to the police station to request a warrant against Jeffrey and later admitted she was trying to mislead the investigation. The prosecutor further noted that after the incident, Susan took the children to her sister's house and tried to scrub the bloodstains from the carpet and floor using bleach. She also dragged the blood-soaked mattress to the backyard to wash it. Susan claimed she only cleaned because she believed Jeffrey was still alive and feared he would reprimand her for the mess. However, the prosecutor questioned why, if she thought he was alive, she bought bags of dirt and covered him up. Susan answered that she felt she needed to hide him out of fear that he would wake up and be extremely angry. During the trial, Jeffrey's ex-girlfriend testified about her experiences with him. She explained that she moved in with Jeffrey, who was living with his parents at the time. At first, she found him charming, but he soon became abusive, particularly after drinking. She described instances where he would insult her, lift her by her hands, and even throw her down the stairs. After one violent incident, she injured herself on a piece of glass and reported it to the police, which led to Jeffrey's arrest. While he was in custody, he threatened her and pressured her to withdraw the police report, leaving her terrified of what he might do when he got out of prison. Ultimately, she fled to another city, but Jeffrey tracked her down. By then, she had started a new relationship with a man who could protect her. A social worker who specializes in domestic violence and a professor from Houston College of Law, known for their research on women who experience violence, both confirmed that Susan was a typical victim of domestic abuse. They explained that women in such situations often feel that the only way to escape is to eliminate their abuser. Despite the evidence and arguments of the defense, Susan was again convicted, but her sentence was reduced to 20 years in prison. She was recently released early after serving 16 years. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Aaron supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Aaron ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, she felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and work to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on this Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, they were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Amanda Perot. On February 3, 2020, Seth Perot called his boss, the sheriff, to report a tragic incident at his home. His wife had died and he needed help. When the police arrived, Seth had just gotten out of the shower. Inside the bedroom, they discovered the body of 44-year-old Amanda on the bed, shot in the head. Initially, the scene appeared to match Seth's description on the phone. Then forensic experts began combing the area and collecting evidence. Seth was taken to the police station to give a statement. He said that he and his wife, Amanda, were lying in bed when they got into an argument. During the argument, Amanda suddenly pulled out a gun and shot herself in the head. Seth said that he had no time to react and stop her. When questioned by police, he described their day before the tragedy. They had dropped their children off at school and had not been anywhere else until the incident. Seth appeared extremely upset, almost in tears, expressing regret for losing the woman he loved more than anything after 8 happy years together. Initially, Seth said he had not touched Amanda. However, he later said he had hugged her several times after the shooting. He struggled to remember whether he had touched the gun and repeatedly claimed that he was a good cop. The police asked him more questions, leading to increasing doubts about his credibility. They knew that Seth, who had come from another police department, had a bad reputation and was known for aggressive behavior at work. When Amanda's relatives heard about the tragedy, they rushed to the house and informed the police that Amanda would never act in such a way or leave her children with an abusive husband. They were convinced that Seth had killed Amanda and urged the police to investigate the possibility. Meanwhile, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene and concluded that it was a homicide. Their findings were supported by the location of the body and the gun. A .380 caliber Smith & Wesson was discovered nearby, with a discarded magazine found next to her right side. A bullet was found in the chamber of the semi-automatic pistol. When the gun is fired, the spent cartridge case is ejected, and a new cartridge is loaded. Because there was a bullet in the chamber, the magazine should have been removed after the shot was fired. If the gun was functioning properly, the magazine could only be ejected by pressing a button, which would have had to be done after the shot. However, if the Amanda died immediately, who pressed the button? The weapon was tested and found to have no faults. Additionally, there was no blood on Amanda's hands or on the long sleeves of her shirt. The bedroom contained 20 miniature whiskey bottles, and there were no signs of forced entry or any intruders. The primary suspect was the Seth. He was a police officer trained to use a gun, and the murder was carried out with his service weapon. Police began investigating the couple's relationship more closely and discovered some interesting details. Amanda Perot was born in 1975 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a small town with a population of about 29,000. Relatives described her as a cheerful and kind person, always willing to help others and devoted to her family. The Amanda had 2 children from her first marriage, which ended in a difficult divorce due to her ex-husband's abusive behavior. Amanda struggled to escape this toxic relationship. In 2011, after her divorce, Amanda met Seth online. At that time, Seth was seriously ill with cancer, unemployed, and living with his parents, who were supporting him financially. He loved communicating online, and when he discovered Amanda's profile, he felt intrigued. He contacted her and they started chatting. To Amanda, Seth seemed like the complete opposite of her ex-husband. He was sweet, polite, and kind. As their conversations continued, Amanda and Seth grew close and started considering a face-to-face meeting. Eventually, Seth's health improved, and his cancer went into remission. He invited Amanda to meet in person. And their date went well. They instantly liked each other and began dating. During this time, Amanda learns that Seth has a daughter from a previous marriage who lives with mother, and he is determined to fight for custody of the child. Amanda moved in with Seth's parents along with. They were pleased that Seth had finally found a partner and believed everything was going well. Amanda took on the responsibility of caring for Seth, which led her to drift away from her own family. 2 of her sisters noted that after the move, Amanda dedicated herself entirely to looking after Seth. She also worked and took care of her children, leaving her little time to connect with family and friends. It was a challenging period for Amanda, but she never complained. Seth insisted that Amanda quit her job to be with him all the time, and his fairly wealthy parents supported this decision. Over time, Amanda's relatives lost touch with her. She stopped attending family gatherings, missing Christmas and Thanksgiving. She also ceased to personally congratulate her relatives on their birthdays, choosing instead to do so only by phone. Amanda became focused entirely on Seth and the children, celebrating all holidays with his family. Seth then took Amanda's cell phone, saying she didn't need it because she was always home with him. Amanda didn't have a phone, so her family couldn't contact her. Seth controlled every aspect of Amanda's life and wouldn't let her leave the house alone. After 5 years together, Seth and Amanda secretly married on June 23, 2017. Only their children attended the wedding. They didn't invite anyone else or tell anyone about this important moment in Amanda's life. Many believe that Seth married Amanda primarily for his own interests. He was determined to gain custody of his daughter from his ex-wife, and to do this, he needed to formalize his relationship with Amanda. Many thought this was his true motivation for marrying her. Without this goal, he might not have married at all. Although Seth appeared happy with Amanda, he had complete control over her and was very persistent in getting his way. He spent months in court fighting for custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was successful and won full custody of his daughter, after which Seth took his daughter to live with them. Amanda had no say in family decisions and was completely submissive to his decisions. In 2018, Seth's father purchased a beautiful house for them near the lake, and the family moved in. Amanda remained a housewife, as Seth did not allow her to work. A year later, Seth secured a job as a patrolman with the Tenton Police Department. After Seth started his job, his relationship with Amanda deteriorated. He began drinking excessively after work. One night, he fell down the stairs while drunk and got hurt. This led him to misuse painkillers along with alcohol, causing him to become extremely irritable and aggressive. He often threatened Amanda physically. On January 28, 2020, after suffering another attack from her husband, Amanda escaped to a neighbor's house and called 911 for help. When the police arrived, Amanda showed them the bruises from the abuse. Their 3 children confirmed her story. Seth's 8-year-old daughter reported that she had heard screams and seen her father pushing and hitting Amanda. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet to avoid the violence. After Amanda fled, Seth discovered the children hiding and forced them to come out. They obeyed but were very frightened of him. Seth was then arrested and charged that evening. Amanda called her sister, asking for a ride the next morning because she was afraid to stay home, knowing that her husband would be released soon. The next morning, Seth was released on $1,500 bail and returned home. Amanda later called her sister back saying that she didn't need to come anymore because everything was fine. However, her sister was shocked, realizing how dangerous Seth was to Amanda and the children. She couldn't understand why Amanda continued to forgive him. Amanda's sister came to her house and tried to convince her to leave with the children and divorce Seth. Amanda was against this idea. Her sister then left. Seth was temporarily suspended during the investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child abuse. Amanda took part in the hearings related to Seth's case. When the judge asked if she wanted a restraining order against him, she declined, saying she had forgiven him. As a result, Seth was released, and they went home together. Just 5 days later, on February 3, 2020, Amanda was found dead. Police, after reviewing a history of conflict and domestic violence, concluded that Amanda's death was not an accident. They suspected Seth of shooting her. During questioning, Seth maintained his innocence, claiming that their argument was due to recent allegations of domestic violence. During the argument, she pulled out a gun and shot herself. The police questioned how Amanda could have accessed Seth's gun, given his strict nature and the control he had over her. Police later found a handwritten note on Amanda's nightstand in which she praised her husband and described his great character. In the note, she wrote, "Amanda Perot wants to retract her statement. Her husband has never raised a hand to hit her. She feels very bad for the humiliation she has caused him. She is willing to accept any punishment she deserves for her actions." However, Amanda's sister does not believe that Amanda would write such things about her husband. The handwriting on the note appears to be different from Amanda's usual style, raising concerns that she may not have written it herself, or that she wrote it under pressure or at the behest of her husband. Therefore, the handwriting appears unusual. Seth has a hard time explaining the bruises on Amanda's body. Police suspect that he coerced her into writing the letter to make her death appear voluntary, in an attempt to escape guilt. The investigation is ongoing, with police believing Seth shot his wife and actively gathering evidence against him. They have interviewed the couple's friends and family to uncover more about the history of domestic violence in their relationship. Neighbors reported hearing screams from the couple's house almost daily and often saw Seth intoxicated. The community was aware that the couple frequently argued, with Seth being the aggressor when he drank. Amanda, on the other hand, appeared to be a quiet and modest person, and neighbors never saw her drinking. There were multiple instances where neighbors witnessed Seth dragging Amanda by her hair in their driveway. Although they felt sympathy for her, no one called the police out of fear of Seth, who was a police officer himself. On the day Amanda died, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. There were no sounds coming from the house. The only witness to the events was Seth, whose testimony was not trusted during the investigation. It was revealed that just 20 minutes before Seth's call, a deputy police officer had shown up at their door with a summons for domestic violence. Video from the doorbell camera showed the officer approaching, introducing himself, and waiting for someone to answer. Although Seth heard noises inside, no one answered. The deputy police officer were puzzled by Seth's behavior, knowing that Seth was a police officer who knew the procedures. Seth only needed to hand over some documents, so the deputy police officer wondered why he was hiding and refusing to open the door. Initially, the deputy police officer thought that Seth might not be fully clothed, which could explain the lack of response. He turned his back to the door and asked Seth to simply hand over the documents without looking inside, but still no one responded. This was unusual. After waiting another 7 minutes, the deputy police officer left. They later speculated that when Seth saw the police at the door, he became frightened. Apparently, a shot was fired just before the deputy police officer arrived. After the deputy left, he took a few minutes to calm down and then called his sheriff on his cell phone. Police later discovered that Seth had lied about not leaving the house on the day of the murder. Police reviewed surveillance cameras from the area and the couple's bank card transactions, finding that they had gone to a store 10 miles from their home that day and purchased 20 bottles of liquor. More importantly, the cameras recorded what the Seth was wearing, a Pink Floyd t-shirt and black sweatpants. 4 hours later, when police arrived at the Peralt's home, Seth was wearing different clothes. A plain black t-shirt and the clothes he had worn to the store were found in a washing machine, which had been turned off. In addition, Seth was still wet from his shower. Police suspected that he may have tried to wash off gunpowder residue and blood that may have gotten on him during the shooting, but he had not started the washing cycle. A small smear of Amanda's blood was later found on his pants, and traces of gunpowder were discovered on Seth's left hand. Based on this evidence, the investigation resumed just 2 days after the tragedy on February 5 in 2020. Seth was arrested for the murder of Amanda Perot. He denied any involvement in her death and also refuted allegations of domestic violence. The couple's 3 children were interviewed by child psychologists, and all 3 reported that Seth frequently abused their mother in front of them. The day before Amanda's death, she urged the children not to speak to the police, warning them that Seth might lose custody of their daughter and could retaliate violently. The children lived in constant fear of him. Their testimonies were presented as evidence during the trial. Seth's daughter requested to move in with her mother, and this request was granted, while Amanda's other children stayed with her sister throughout the trial. On August 21, 2020, something unexpected occurred. The autopsy report was released. The state medical examiner concluded that Amanda Perot had shot herself, citing the absence of struggle signs and the burns on her skin from the gunshot. This finding shocked the prosecution, who disagreed with the forensic expert's assessment. The trial began on November 3, 2020, with the prosecution presenting all the evidence that Seth was guilty: gunpowder residue on his hands, blood on his unwashed clothes, discrepancies in the placement of Amanda's body in the gun, and most importantly, Seth's motive for killing his wife. Despite this evidence, Seth maintained his innocence. His attorney argued that changing clothes and showering were not important. Seth simply chose to shower during the day and made no attempt to hide anything. The bloodstain may have been from a previous incident where Amanda accidentally hurt herself. However, the presence of gunpowder on Seth's hands was unexplained. It was suggested he might have gotten it while at the police station. The lawyer pointed out that even the state medical examiner concluded Amanda shot herself, as there were no clear signs of a struggle. While burns on her body indicated she was shot from a close distance, the prosecutor claimed that Seth had given her alcohol and drugs, preventing her from defending herself. Amanda's phone had photos of her with a bruise under her eye and a split lip, as well as videos of her husband threatening her, which she had recorded secretly. In a message to her sisters, Amanda said, "Seth just choked she until I almost lost consciousness. He split she lip." The prosecutor noted that a gun magazine was found next to her right hand, while a firearm with a loaded cartridge was located about 1.5 meters away against the wall and ceiling. Blood was also found on the bedspread, with 2 cartridges present, suggesting that the crime scene had been staged. This was in contrast to Seth's claim that he had not touched or moved the body or the gun. The sister of the Amanda testified in court that Amanda had told her just days before the tragedy that if anything happened to her, it would be at the hands of her husband. Police chief reported that when he received the call about Amanda's death, Seth initially mumbled something incoherent before suddenly screaming. Only after he calmed down was he able to explain what had happened. Additionally, Seth's cellmate testified during the trial, claiming that Seth confessed to him about killing his wife. He described how Seth had given Amanda alcohol, sedatives, and painkillers on the day she died, which caused her to lose consciousness, after which he shot her. A toxicology report confirmed that Amanda had high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system at the time of her death. On February 25, 2022, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Seth Perot, 45, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Seth's lawyers were furious with the verdict, claiming that there was no direct evidence to prove his guilt. Following the verdict, Seth Perot's new legal team filed its first appeal, which was denied. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Karen Newell. Sunday evening, February 20th, 1994, on a desolate rural road in Orange County, Florida, between Cocoa Beach and Orlando. A car was parked on the side of the road, and a woman was frantically waving her arms at passing vehicles. When a driver finally stopped, she pleaded for help. In the car's headlights, a man could be seen bleeding in the passenger seat. A woman named Karen Newell was trying to save her husband, John Newell, who had been shot multiple times but was still alive. Karen asked the driver for a phone and urgently called 911, screaming that her husband was dying. Within minutes, a deputy sheriff arrived, followed by police and paramedics, but it was too late for John. He needed a forensic expert, not medical assistance. He died before help could arrive, and all the doctors could do was confirm his death from multiple gunshot wounds. They immediately began communicating with Karen about the tragic situation. Karen recounted that they were attacked while returning home to Orlando after a day at the beach. On the way back, their cars started having problems that she couldn't understand. Her husband asked her to pull over to the side of the road to check the issue. As Karen got out and opened the hood, a small sedan parked right next to them. Inside were 3 men who looked threatening. One detail she remembered was a sticker on the rear window that said "Bad Boy." The men got out of their car without noticing Karen, who was focused on the engine. She watched as one of them approached her husband's window and demanded his wallet. Her husband refused and tried to defend himself. During the struggle, one of the attackers pulled out a gun and shot him multiple times. Afterward, the men jumped back into their car and drove away. Fortunately, Karen was unharmed. She quickly ran to John, who was bleeding. She felt helpless and couldn't do anything to save him. Karen Newell was originally from Florida and had faced a difficult life filled with cruelty since childhood. Despite these challenges, she maintained a cheerful and energetic spirit, enjoying parties and socializing with her many friends throughout high school. As she blossomed into a beautiful young woman, heads turned wherever she went, but this did not lead to a happy family life. After graduating, she experienced several unsuccessful relationships and, by her 20th birthday, had been married twice, with both marriages ending in divorce. Nevertheless, she hopeful. That spring, she focused on advancing her career. Previously, she had held various accounting jobs and worked as a nurse in a private clinic. This charming brunette even entered beauty contests, hoping to launch a modeling career, but luck was not on her side in those pursuits. One evening, she walked into a bar in one of Orlando's suburbs. There, she found a friendly stranger sitting alone with a drink. He was John, a respected local mechanic who owned a car repair shop. Just before their meeting, John had gone through a difficult breakup with his first wife, a Navy nurse who had just returned home from a long business trip. She told him she was seeing someone else, which was why he went to the bar that night. When Karen saw him, she felt an immediate attraction. Confident and outgoing, she approached him, sat down next to him, and began chatting. She discovered that he was the owner of a popular auto repair shop, young, successful, and attractive. Their brief encounter quickly developed into a passionate night. John then fell in love with Karen, and she felt the same. Their relationship flourished rapidly, and just 2 months after their intense night together, they got married on May 22, 1993. The newlyweds appeared genuinely happy, surrounded by a wave of love and joy. Shortly after their wedding, Karen's modeling prospects improved, thanks to her husband's connections and her regular participation in beauty contests. She landed a well-paying television job, leading to a busy schedule that often kept her away for several days. Despite John's worries about losing Karen like he lost his first wife, she reassured him that she would never betray him. She reminded him that their sacrifices would eventually pay off, and together they dreamed of retiring in 5 years, free from work and worry. However, just a few months after their wedding, Karen discovered she was pregnant. The couple was thrilled. John's desire for a large family seemed within reach, and they continued to support each other through this exciting new chapter. A few days after Valentine's Day, they planned a weekend getaway to the beach in Florida to relax after a busy week. On February 20th, John and Karen packed their bags and drove to Cocoa Beach, located on the east side of Orlando. Known for its stunning views and excellent surfing, they spent the entire day enjoying the beach, having a barbecue, swimming, and before leaving, stopped by a surf shop to buy some gear. After that, they packed their belongings and headed home. Karen was driving because her husband had consumed some alcohol earlier and wanted to avoid losing his license. John sat in the front passenger seat. They passed through a toll booth and entered the state highway. At this time, her husband was adjusting the radio, which wasn't functioning properly. Suddenly, the car skidded slightly. Karen mentioned to her husband that the car felt odd, and she noticed a strong vibration in the steering wheel. They decided to pull over and investigate, but then the attack occurred. John was shot multiple times while sitting in the passenger seat of the car. The police conducted a detailed search for the attackers. Using Karen's testimony, they were able to create a detailed description of the car, noting one key detail, a sticker on the rear window. Karen later reported feeling unwell. She was pregnant, so emergency services rushed her to the hospital to ensure her and her baby's safety. 2.40 caliber shell casings were found near the car, indicating that the men were dangerous criminals. They were armed with at least one handgun. Surprisingly, they fled so quickly that they forgot to take the victim's wallet. Police alerted neighboring counties, notified all available patrols, and warned drivers of passing cars. Checkpoints were set up, with officers carefully monitoring vehicles. Initially, attention was focused on cars with bad boy stickers. However, no drivers reported seeing such a car, and it did not pass through the checkpoints. In the ambulance, Karen answered all the necessary questions about the incident. However, the health of the Karen and child was the main priority at that time. After being examined at the hospital, doctors confirmed that the Karen was in stable condition. She was able to speak with police officers later that same day. Karen provided a detailed account of the events. She explained that they were not alone on the beach. A friend from work, Peter, joined them shortly after they arrived at Cocoa Beach. The three of them spent most of the day together, and at the end of the day, they drove back to Orlando in 2 separate cars. Peter drove his own car while Karen followed him closely behind. After passing the toll booth, Peter drove ahead and quickly vanished from view. Soon after, Karen's car began to vibrate. Her husband insisted they stop immediately to check the car's condition. Karen got out of the driver's seat and opened the hood. Suddenly, she heard the screech of brakes as a stranger's car pulled up near theirs. Just seconds later, gunfire erupted. In that moment, Karen crouched down to hide under the open hood. She overheard the attackers, dressed in black and white, demanding her husband's wallet. Then, several loud shots rang out, and the criminals fled the scene. She noticed that the robbers didn't take the wallet, but she couldn't see their faces. The police arrived quickly and began investigating the scene, exploring various possibilities. Some unusual aspects caught their attention, raising doubts about Karen's statement. First, no one reported seeing a car marked "Bad Boy." Second, it seemed odd that the robbers, who were after a wallet for money, would leave abruptly and forget their loot after committing murder. Third, they overlooked the woman and didn't check why the car's hood was open. Finally, it was odd that John, a mechanic, didn't check under the hood himself, while the one checking the car was Karen, who didn't know much about cars. The police did not charge Karen with fraud. Instead, they chose to gather more details about the case. The police quickly found some interesting information, specifically a report from 3 months earlier in Orlando. It turned out that an assault had occurred at Karen's home. According to the couple's previous statements, at around 9 p.m., Karen heard a noise in their backyard. She told her husband about it and asked him to check it out. When John went outside, he encountered 2 masked men. The neighbor quickly left the house when he heard the noise, and the porch light suddenly turned on, scaring the attackers, so they ran away. John returned home and told his wife what had happened, and she called the rescue service. John was not seriously injured, but he had a lot of bruises. John had no valuable information that could help catch the criminals, since he could not see their faces. After a brief and unsuccessful search, John's family's case was declared unsolved. John believed that he had interrupted the robbers, leading to their attack on his home. However, things now seemed more serious. He may have inadvertently made enemies, and they had come back to destroy him. This also explained why they did not take his wallet. Their goal was never to steal, but to kill him. The police started investigating all the people that John might have had conflicts with recently. John ran a successful business, raising the question of whether competitors could resort to extreme actions. Most of John's friends and acquaintances were unaware of any conflicts. John was known to be a kind and non-confrontational person, never speaking about any unpleasant situations that might cause resentment towards him. Everyone agreed that he was always willing to help others. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that John's kind nature may have contributed to the tragedy. Police discovered that shortly before the attack, a stranger had appeared in John's backyard. He was identified as Peter, a friend of Karen's who had recently gone on vacation with their family John. Peter's apartment had been broken into, forcing him to seek temporary housing. Karen convinced John to allow Peter to stay in her home for a while to support him during this difficult time. Peter is an attractive young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. After new discoveries in the investigation, there is growing suspicion that Karen has feelings for Peter, and that Peter is likely the father of the child. It is possible that the couple planned to eliminate John in order to benefit financially from their relationship. Peter, who had a close relationship with Karen, became a suspect in the murder investigation. He was brought to the police station for questioning. During the interview, Peter's account matched what Karen had said. He confirmed that he had gone to Cocoa Beach with Karen's family and spent time there with them, drinking beer and smoking marijuana. That evening, he drove away after passing through a checkpoint, not waiting for Karen's family because he was on his way home to Port St. Lucie. Overall, his story was consistent with Karen's account. He provided detailed information about his background to counter any claims about an affair with Karen. At that moment, it became clear that Karen had lied. She had claimed that Peter was an assistant producer at a TV channel where she worked, but that was false. In reality, Peter did not have a steady job. He had dropped out of school and occasionally did part-time work like mowing lawns. This allowed him to make enough money to get by, but he was not involved in any television work. Police learned from Peter's friends that Karen had been having an affair with Peter, which began a few months before he moved into John's house. During this time, Peter often bragged about his relationship with a married woman and often shared the story of how they met. It was later revealed that Karen had used business trips as an excuse to spend time with Peter. At the time, Karen was 29 and Peter was 18. While Karen kept the relationship a secret, she often visited him in the city, where they enjoyed days together and spent John's money. They met by chance while driving on the highway. The Karen caught his attention with her handcuff keychain hanging from her rearview mirror. When they stopped at a traffic light, he happily stuck his hands out the window as if they were handcuffed. To his surprise, she smiled back and they began flirting. After their first meeting, they spent the night together on the beach. His friends noticed that Peter was very fond of Karen. He even talked seriously about marrying her and was convinced that she might be pregnant with his child. The couple had a clear motive for killing John. However, at this stage of the investigation, there was no concrete evidence to confirm their involvement. The first step was to locate the murder weapon. A .22 caliber pistol was found at the crime scene. Police are looking for witnesses who may know about Peter and Karen's weapons. They interviewed one of the Karen's ex-husbands, who revealed that Peter was not Karen's only sexual partner. She often meets with her ex in various hotels. In November 1993, she approached him with an unusual request to borrow a .22 caliber pistol for self-defense, claiming she felt threatened after two strangers attacked John. He believed her and provided her with the weapon, which raised suspicions. It is necessary to locate the pistol and conduct ballistics testing to determine whether John was shot with this gun. When the police asked Karen's ex-husband about the weapon, he reported that she had not yet returned it. This raised the police's suspicions about Karen's involvement in her husband's death. As they investigated her background, they discovered that she was on probation at the time. In the 1980s, Karen had been convicted of credit card forgery and large-scale theft. Because of her probation status, she was not allowed to possess the weapon given to her by her ex-husband. Consequently, just 8 days after John's death, Karen was arrested for violating her probation, which meant she would remain in custody until the investigation was finished. Police quickly received crucial evidence just 2 days after the arrest. They interviewed Louis Aragon, Karen's half-brother. Louis had a criminal history. In the summer of 1993, Karen approached him with a proposition. Her husband had a $500,000 life insurance policy, and Karen wanted him to help eliminate John. In exchange, she promised him a large payout. However, despite the tempting offer, Louis refused to participate in the murder. In November, Peter and Karen planned to brutally beat John in their yard over a money dispute. Fortunately, a neighbor intervened in time and scared the attackers away, which angered Karen, who had begun to plan how to get rid of her troublesome husband. Key to the investigation was the testimony of her half-brother, Louis. He revealed that Karen had approached him just days after the first attack and tried to convince him to participate in a second murder, but he had refused. Peter, however, was willing to do anything for Karen. As Thanksgiving approached in 1993, Karen convinced her husband to allow Peter to live with them. The police needed to verify the truthfulness of their new witness. They started by reviewing the couple's insurance policies. They discovered that Karen had taken out a life insurance policy on her husband for $250,000, which was stored in his safe. Over time, she acquired several additional policies, totaling around $500,000, a significant sum at that time. It appeared that her greed led her to eliminate her husband in order to collect the insurance payouts. Karen was determined to receive the money. In the days following John's death, she contacted various insurance companies, and some had already issued her compensation by the time of the investigation. However, the largest payments were on hold, prompting Karen to visit multiple insurance companies to demand her money. Meanwhile, on March 28, 1994, Peter was arrested as well. Both were charged with John Newell's murder. The prosecutor's office alleges that from the beginning, Karen began her relationship with John with the intention of receiving his insurance money. After getting married, she quickly took out a $250,000 life insurance policy and continued to purchase smaller policies. However, she did not directly participate in any crimes. Instead, she manipulated Peter and convinced him that they would marry and have a child together, portraying her husband, John, as an obstacle to their future. After the murder, a pregnancy test was conducted and it was found that she was not pregnant. She had an IUD, preventing any possibility of pregnancy at the time. Karen was fully aware of this. It was clear that her claim of being pregnant was simply a manipulation tactic to control the men around her. Given her deceitful nature, the prosecutor's office was aiming for the death penalty. And Peter was also facing the death penalty. So it was easy to get a confession by offering a deal. The plea agreement included cross-examination, during which Peter quickly admitted to having an affair with Karen. He claimed that they had been intimate at every meeting. She had won his heart. Peter revealed that it was Karen who had suggested attacking John in his apartment. When that plan failed, Karen began planning a more elaborate crime. As soon as Peter got out of the car, he pointed a gun at John's head and fired 3 more bullets into John's chest. Peter then dumped the gun in a lake several miles from the crime scene. Divers were able to recover the gun, and ballistics tests confirmed that it was the same gun that had shot John Newell. Additionally, the gun's serial number matched the serial number registered to Karen's ex-husband. In exchange for this crucial information, Peter was offered a plea deal for second-degree murder instead of first-degree murder. During the preliminary hearing, it was clear that Karen's lawyers were determined to fight hard. They tried to blame Peter, arguing that he was the mastermind behind the crime, motivated by jealousy over. Karen was portrayed as an innocent victim caught in the love triangle. If Karen was not involved in planning the murder, then how did Peter get the gun that her ex-husband owned? She never gave a satisfactory explanation for this. In addition, Peter and Karen's ex-husband did not know each other. The ex-husband even confirmed that Karen asked him for a gun. On September 5, 1994, Peter was sentenced to a long prison term with the possibility of parole, and he was released in early January 2010. And Karen Newell was sentenced to life in prison. She complained that it was unfair that Peter, who pulled the trigger, received a lighter sentence than she. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Mario Biondo. Mario Biondo was born in Italy, one of 3 sons of Santino d'Alessandria and Giuseppe Biondo. The family was known for its friendliness and generosity. From an early age, Mario was very creative and loved photography. He showed his talent and knowledge, eventually becoming a member of the technical support team in television. Throughout his life, Mario was active in volleyball, participating in many team competitions. This experience taught him valuable lessons about team spirit, trust, and accepting defeat. His good looks and charm attracted many admirers. Then Mario met Raquel Sanchez Silva, a talented young woman from Spain. After graduating from journalism in 1994, she aspired to become a television presenter. Raquel benefited from her mother Matilda's connections in the industry, but her intelligence and talent were already known to everyone. The couple met in Honduras in 2011, where Mario worked as a cameraman and Raquel was a presenter on the reality TV show Celebrity Island. Raquel quickly fell in love with him. According to her friends, she expressed her feelings openly, which was very unusual for her. Fortunately, Mario felt the same way and they started dating. Despite the age difference, everyone admired this smart and talented couple, and they became local celebrities, with the public closely following their lives. In June 2012, Mario and Raquel got married in Sicily. The wedding was a classic, beautiful event by Italian standards, celebrated with grandeur for several days. Locals believed that such a wedding would lead to a happy and long-lasting marriage. Unfortunately, this did not happen. Just a year later, on May 29, 2013, a tragic event occurred. Mario and Raquel had a small argument, a common problem for young couples, but they resolved it through reconciliation. At that time, the couple had been married for almost a year and were living in Raquel's apartment in central Madrid. Raquel needed to go to her hometown of Plasencia for work, so at around 8:30 p.m. that same evening, they said goodbye to each other in the garage before she left. The trip had been planned in advance and everything seemed to be going according to schedule. After Raquel left, Mario was alone at home. Mario made 3 phone calls. One was to his sister Emanuela, who lived in Sicily. He shared his ambitious plans for future television projects, which included preparing a new show and eventually traveling around the world with Raquel to create a travel blog. He also made 2 other calls, one of which may have been to a drug dealer. That evening, the Mario went to an ATM near his home at around 10 p.m., where he withdrew 110 euros. However, the money was never found in his home, suggesting that he had spent it all. About an hour later, a neighbor saw Mario at the entrance to his apartment building. She noticed that he was behaving unusually and ignoring her, which was out of character for him as he was usually very polite. He seemed upset, but there was no immediate cause for concern. Mario called his wife, and they talked until midnight, then continued their conversation via text messages. They mainly discussed their current situation, especially their difficulties conceiving. Raquel, 40, desperately wanted a baby but was unable to get pregnant, which worried both of them. Mario suspects that he may be infertile due to a disease he previously suffered from. Later, the Mario spoke with his brother Andrea about several exciting new projects he had planned for the future. Their conversations on social media and over the phone continued until 1 a.m., when Mario cleverly said goodnight to his wife and told her he was going to sleep. However, he had no intention of resting. Instead, he spent the next hour browsing various adult websites. He then used Google Maps to locate the nearest strip club to his home. He arrived at the club at 2:53 a.m. Once there, he paid for 3 drinks with his card but did not request any additional services. After spending some time at the club, he returned home. Once at home, he went back to adult websites. Around 6 a.m., he made his final entry on the computer, which contained a rough budget for a new television show he was preparing. After that, he checked his messenger again for any unread messages, but there were none. The next morning, Mario was unresponsive. Neither his family nor his wife could reach him. They assumed he was either resting or busy with the new projects he had mentioned, so no one thought to check on him. At around 3:30 p.m., Raquel, his wife, received a call from his workplace inquiring about his whereabouts. The producer was concerned because Mario hadn't shown up for filming. This was unusual for him, especially since it was the day of one of his favorite programs, Kitchen. Mario took his work seriously and would never let his team down or miss filming without a good reason. When Raquel realized she couldn't reach him by phone or through social media, she became worried and called their worker, Wilma. Raquel asked Wilma to check on him. Around 5 p.m., Wilma arrived at the apartment while on the phone with Raquel. When she opened the door, she was horrified by what she saw and screamed loudly. She quickly ran outside because she found a lifeless body inside. Wilma stopped a passing police car and reported her horrifying discovery. Other rescue teams arrived within 10 minutes. The officers found the body of a 31-year-old man, dressed in pajamas, with a scarf wrapped around his neck. The other end was tied to a shelf in the hallway. It appeared that Mario ended his own life. The police carried out a brief investigation and found that the doors and windows were intact, indicating there had been no forced entry by any outsiders. There were no clear signs of a struggle on the Mario's body, only a few bruises were present that did not appear to result from defensive actions. All this pointed towards the end of his own life. Raquel learned of the tragedy and quickly completed her duties before returning home. She informed the police that he sometimes engaged in strangulation during their sexual activities, suggesting that this could have led to the tragedy. This information interested the police, who considered this angle. Although there was no apparent reason to dismiss it, the investigation proceeded cautiously without jumping to conclusions. Raquel requested that the body be cremated as soon as possible, but her request was denied because the medical examiner needed more time to analyze the body and determine its condition. On June 1, 2013, Mario's family filed an appeal challenging the findings of the inquest. They believe that Mario cannot end his own life. He was determined and had ambitious plans for the future, which he was proud of. His life seemed to be going well, and they felt there was no reason for him to end it. Additionally, Mario's family opposed cremation and insisted on burial instead. The tragic event has attracted public attention as all those allegedly involved are well-known figures in Spain. Raquel shared a post on social media mourning her husband's death, describing him as a cheerful and ambitious person. However, she raised the possibility that his death could have been the result of his own life, or an accident. Raquel also alluded to potential issues with sex addiction and asked friends and supporters not to jump to conclusions and wait for the final investigation. A forensic expert concluded that Mario's death was likely an accident, noting that he had stopped using his phone around 6 a.m., which was the estimated time of death. Consequently, the case regarding Mario Biondo's death was closed, and no further investigations were planned. Mario was buried in his hometown in Italy on June 6, 2013, with his Raquel and family in attendance. In a noble gesture, Raquel chose to forego her husband's inheritance in favor of his family. Afterward, the Raquel began to withdraw from those around her. She moved to a different apartment and sold the one she had shared with her husband. Soon after, she voluntarily resigned from her television position. Those who interacted with her during this time noted that she appeared calm and composed, never showing signs of sadness or regret. Seemingly unaffected by recent events, she only briefly withdrew from the public eye. On June 27, 2013, she returned to television, quickly resuming her role as a presenter. She explained that returning to work had helped her try to forget and find comfort. Raquel, who quickly recovered, began a relationship with a new man, a businessman who had previously given an interview on Rakita. Mario's relatives were puzzled by her behavior, as it seemed that she had completely forgotten about her husband. Just a few weeks ago, she had been deeply in love with him, and her sudden change in mood raised many questions and suspicions. Mario's relatives were concerned about the circumstances surrounding his death, so they asked the police to conduct a further investigation. They specifically requested that his wife be questioned first. The police initially declined, stating that the case was closed. However, 7 months later, in December 2013, they agreed to reopen the investigation. Mario's body was exhumed, and the police reinterrogated all the witnesses. Additionally, the family hired 2 independent experts because they believed the initial forensic expert had erred in his findings. The new investigation used computer modeling to examine the details of Mario's death. Analysis showed that his posture was inconsistent with one's own life. He could not have been in that position to suffocate. The position of his legs did not match the marks on his neck or the type of knot used on his scarf, suggesting the scene had been staged. It was possible that someone else assisted him in staging it. Police began to consider the possibility that his death was a homicide. The case was reopened and the investigation continued. However, things took a different turn, made more complicated by the fact that so much time had passed since Mario's death that crucial evidence was lost. News spread quickly through the community and people began demanding answers about Mario's suspicious death. Back home, under pressure from the family, the local police also launched their own investigation, based on the results of an autopsy by independent forensic experts, and they began to suspect that this could be a homicide. Italian police traveled to Spain to conduct an autopsy and interview people close to Mario, including Raquel. They suspected she was hiding something due to her inconsistent statements. Police noticed several photos from the crime scene showing an ashtray full of cigarette butts and several empty beer cans, suggesting that the Mario had company that night. Surprisingly, no one checked for fingerprints or DNA on these items. Furthermore, no suicide note was found, adding to the mystery. Italian police also discovered that nearly 1,000 gigabytes of data had been deleted from the Mario's computer. Unfortunately, they were unable to recover this data. Mario's mother speculated that Raquel may have deleted the sensitive photos and videos that Raquel had discovered shortly before Mario's death. This further raises suspicions that the Raquel had other secrets that she feared would be revealed. Mario's family believes that Mario wasn't just visiting adult websites or strip clubs that night, he was looking for his wife there. They think he may have discovered something disturbing about her that could have motivated someone to harm him. It was discovered that the password on Mario's computer had been changed after his death and the files had been deleted shortly after, timing that coincided with the day of his funeral when Mario's entire family, including Raquel, were at the cemetery. This raises the question, who could have done this? It turns out that Raquel had a brother who was a computer expert. He left during the funeral and may have done this at her request. In May 2014, Raquel again attracted public attention when she was invited to appear on a show about her husband's death. However, she refused to participate and did not comment on the incident. However, she appeared before journalists in September 2014. She then accused her ex-mother-in-law of harassment. In response, Mario's family accused Raquel of involvement in his death. They believed she was responsible, but Raquel denied any wrongdoing and there was no evidence against her. Despite the accusations, Raquel continued her life. She married in September 2015 and gave birth to twins after undergoing hormone therapy to help her conceive. The father of her children is a businessman she met on television. Raquel no longer thinks about her ex-husband, while Mario's mother continues to search for evidence of Raquel's guilt. At one point, she even went to extremes. She released photos of the actual crime scene taken by the police. In these photos, Mario was in an unnatural position and showed no signs of life. Along with the photos, a forensic report from independent experts was included, stating that a person could not suddenly leave life in such a way. The photos showed clear contradictions with the initial police reports that were intended to quickly close the case after his death. Specifically, the reports mentioned that Mario's legs were bent, but in fact, his body was hanging with his legs straight. This move caused considerable public outrage, leading to increased police scrutiny, after which they initiated a more thorough investigation. In 2016, the intense media attention surrounding Raquel's trial led to a second autopsy conducted by a state medical examiner. This expert determined that Mario's death was a result of his own choice to end his life. Consequently, Raquel won the legal case, and the court ordered Mario's mother to pay her €3,000 for emotional damages. Following this, Mario's mother was placed under house arrest for 8 days. This incident fueled rumors and received extensive media coverage, culminating in a televised appeal that stressed the idea that Mario had chosen to end his life, reportedly due to his deep worries about infertility and his inability to have children with the woman he loved. As a result, the case was closed once again in Spain. The Italian police decided to close the case due to procedural constraints and the inability to conduct further investigations after so many years. They also criticized the Spanish police for the way they handled the investigation into Mario's death. However, the investigation did not end there. In 2017, a new expert, Spanish expert Luis Duca, was brought into the forensic department. After a thorough analysis of the circumstances surrounding Mario's death, he concluded that Mario could not have committed one's own life voluntarily. Luis Duca's opinion was highly valued because he had 15 years of experience investigating complex cases. The forensic expert stated that he thoroughly reviewed the dossier and all materials available to the police. His analysis was funded by Mario's family, and it confirmed their suspicions about the circumstances of Mario's death. Notably, there were no indicators of strangulation, such as small hemorrhages in the eyes. He believed that Mario could not have suffered a neck fracture from the height of his fall. Nor could he have died from suffocation since his heels touched the ground. For death by cerebral ischemia to occur, a tight noose would need to be placed around the neck. However, the scarf used did not adequately secure the back of the head and only partially surrounded it. The knot was so loose that Mario's head could easily have slipped out of the scarf. The pale blue color of the body suggests that Mario died lying down. There were no signs of convulsions at the time of death, as none of the items, including the figurine or picture frame, fell off the shelf, which would have occurred if there had been any violent movement. There was an unexplained fresh wound to the left of Mario's temple. The marks on Mario's neck did not match the scarf. He had clearly been strangled with another object, such as a rope or cable. The scratches on his neck could not be attributed to gravity alone. Additionally, the position in which the body was found raised significant questions. There were many more plausible ways for a person to die that would have been more comfortable. Why was he placed in this very awkward pose? According to police reports, the level of rigor mortis and the extremely low body temperature suggested that Mario died much earlier than 6 a.m., likely just after midnight. The theory of sexual activity was deemed unconvincing by experts, as Mario was fully clothed and there were no signs of any sexual manipulation involving his body. Experts used specialized software and obtained details about the metal shelf where Mario's body was found. Their analysis indicated that if he had died from hanging, he would have fallen to the floor. This led them to conclude that he must have been strangled in a different location, and the hanging was staged. Consequently, Mario's previously embalmed body was exhumed. During this examination, they discovered a significant hematoma in his brain, which suggested he had suffered a severe blow from a blunt object, information that had been missing from the original autopsy reports. It raised questions about how such crucial details could have been overlooked, giving the impression that they might have been intentionally concealed. Alongside the release of this data, Raquel revised her statement. Initially, she had said that her husband used strangulation as a sexual game since his youth, suggesting his death was either accidental or an end one's own life driven by personal issues. Now, she indicated that her husband might have been with someone he trusted while she was away, and that this person could have harmed him. She also speculated that her husband may have consumed alcohol or drugs, rendering him unable to defend himself. A new account emerged, stating that Mario allowed an acquaintance into their home, who then struck him forcefully on the head. This blow with a blunt object knocked him unconscious, after which a scarf was wrapped around his neck and used to strangle him. There were no signs of a struggle because he likely didn't have time to react. Following the attack, the assailant allegedly staged to end one's own life and calmly left the apartment. This explanation addressed why there were no indications of a break-in or any unknown people entering the home. In October 2018, writer Paolo Gentili released the book The Death of a Good Guy, the incredible story of Mario Biondo in Italy. He collaborated closely with Mario's mother, a key figure in this challenging case, as she seeks to defend her son's honor and discover the truth about his murder. The book portrays Raquel Sanchez Silva as manipulative and labels her a liar. On November 5, 2018, after a third autopsy was authorized by Italian authorities, the Anatomical Institute at the Palermo Polyclinic was tasked with conducting the examination. They performed X-rays and a CT scan, which included the participation of independent experts hired by Mario's family. In 2019, Mario's parents filed a complaint with the police investigator who was present at the scene of the crime. During the investigation in 2013, it was discovered that he had seriously violated his duties on several occasions. The police officer was convicted in May 2020, and both the doctor who performed the autopsy and his assistant also faced consequences. The investigation into Mario's death was reopened, revealing new information about the events surrounding the case. Many forensic science experts were brought in to investigate the case. However, a major problem arose because many of the documents used in the original investigation were no longer considered reliable, and some evidence was ignored when the investigation was suspended. One of the most significant violations in this case involved abuse of office. It was demonstrated that the prosecutor's office allowed modifications to PDF files containing evidence of social media interactions and visits to specific websites, which the police had originally reported. This evidence suggested that Mario did not visit any adult websites, nor did he contact a dealer to purchase drugs on the night of his death. All of this was intentionally fabricated. An investigation into Mario's internet connections that night revealed that 2 devices were connected to the apartment's Wi-Fi simultaneously, despite him being home alone. Furthermore, there was no evidence indicating that Mario had ever left the house. His supposed visits to the ATM and the strip club were based solely on the activation of his bank card in those locations, but it was not confirmed that he was the one using it. Mario, who used the cards, appeared to be the target of a malicious effort to damage his reputation. He was allegedly portrayed as a pervert and a substance abuser. However, if he was truly a pervert, why did he only pay for drinks at the strip club and not take advantage of the services offered? Unfortunately, recordings from the ATM and street surveillance cameras had been deleted over time, making it impossible to confirm who withdrew money from the ATM or who was present at the club. It was also puzzling why Mario, as a public figure often in the limelight, would choose to visit a questionable strip club and use his card there when he could have easily paid in cash to keep his visit discreet. A toxicology report on the Mario showed only a low level of alcohol in his system, with no other drugs present. A neighbor who saw Mario that evening began to doubt it was really him. The next day, it was revealed that Mario had been planning to ride his motorcycle and had checked the weather forecast. This raised the question, why would he do this if he was contemplating end one's own life? These inconsistencies prompted further inquiries. A witness was found, a waiter from the restaurant across from the house where the incident occurred. He reported that, from the very morning, all visitors spoke about something bad happening there and that police cars or an ambulance had arrived. However, how could outsiders know that the tragedy had occurred when the family's housekeeper discovered Mario's body after 4 p.m.? Despite new discoveries, several factors slowed down the investigation. First, most evidence had become outdated. Second, reconstructing the sequence of events was unreliable. Third, law enforcement officers initially involved made many errors and did not follow protocols, which required the case to be restarted. Due to the time lost, continuing the investigation became very challenging. In August 2022, the Spanish justice system decided to close the case because of insufficient evidence. However, the family of the Mario strongly opposed this decision, appealing to various authorities. Their persistence paid off, resulting in the case being reopened and classified as a murder in March 2023. The Mario family traveled to Spain again to gather more information about the circumstances surrounding Mario's death and to demonstrate their belief that Raquel was involved in the crime. They felt confident that no one else could have committed it. In the weeks leading up to Mario's deaths, the couple's relationship had significantly worsened due to issues related to pregnancy, and they were close to getting a divorce. The Raquel likely wanted to avoid sharing Mario's assets, particularly after he discovered a damaging secret about her and took money from her, which could also have motivated her to commit the crime. Notably, she insisted on the cremation rite after seeing Mario's body, which raised suspicions that she was trying to hide something. Only Raquel and the mourning workers had keys to the apartment, but no one believed that an elderly worker could have killed Mario. The deceased's family was convinced he wouldn't have invited anyone over so late at night since he needed to wake up early. They believed Raquel, being clever, had meticulously planned everything. She arranged a trip to another city and attempted to tarnish her husband's reputation with false claims about his interest in adult websites and strip clubs. She also fabricated information that was included in the case file. The family of the Mario found her quick departure from their apartment suspicious, as if she were trying to hide something and dispose of the property to cover her tracks. Her rejection of Mario's inheritance, when it became known, was not a noble choice. It turned out that Mario had more debts than assets, which she would have had to pay if she had accepted the inheritance. Furthermore, accepting the inheritance would have required her to pay a significant tax, which she deemed too burdensome. Raquel's behavior at the funeral was also worrying. She arrived with assistants who took complete control of the situation, deciding when she should leave, how she should approach the grave, and how she should pose for photos. At one point, she asked to be left alone at the grave for a short time to pose for the cameras, a decision that left Mario's family confused. Some experts who spoke with Raquel believe she fits the profile of a typical integrated psychopath. This type of person has manipulative and narcissistic traits and can conceal their true identity. To avoid being revealed, they often rely on the idea that while people may see the facade they present, very few notice their true nature. Raquel, portraying herself as Mila, a beautiful woman, successfully hid her darker side, which was exposed by her husband. Unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter. The family of the deceased believes that Raquel skillfully used her intelligence and manipulative traits to carry out her plans. However, proving her involvement in the murder is quite complex, even though the circumstances seem clear. 10 years after the crime, Mario's family remains committed to uncovering the truth and seeking justice. Meanwhile, 50-year-old Raquel leads her life as if nothing ever occurred. She has established a new family and focused on her career, all the while denying any connection to the murder.